Have you guys seen how down bad Twitter is today for Tifa?
Yeah, dude.
This is how we're gonna. I just woke up. I'm hello.
This is it.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen the thirst across Twitter today?
I need you to
Tifa?
not look at my screenshots on my PlayStation console because they are all of Tifa.
There's this scene where she's on the beach.
Oh, yes.
In her
Tifa bathing suit reveal.
and even Cloud is doing these ones. You can't see it unless you're watching the podcast, but he's doing these ones. Like, he's just looking straight down to the point where Tifa does this. She's like, gets underneath into his eye line because
she walks up to him
like,
and he
I know what you're looking
like,
at, Cloud.
Well, the thing is, as well as you can pick which bikini she wears.
Can you actually
Yeah,
do
there's
that?
two.
Live
can
beach
pick
volleyball.
Square Enix knew what they were doing, man. They knew what they were doing.
They know.
That's very, very clever marketing.
She's
so.
a
It's
very
killing me that I haven't
attractive
been
game
able to play it.
character.
Oh, now I really want to play it. I'm disgusting. I'm a
Is that
pig
what?
man.
Oh, really, Jake?
Yes.
That's what's tipped you over, huh? Not the sprawling 70-hour JRPG full of incredible set pieces and action and deep RPG systems.
Nope.
It's Tifa. Okay.
Tifa's the
Nice.
best. We've said
To be
this.
fair,
didn't we have a user
we have
question
said
one time
this
where it was like, "What's your
multiple
I
crush?"
think we did.
Yeah.
It's not even up for debate at this point, really. I mean, she is clearly best girl, so
Yeah.
just have to call it how we see it.
Yeah.
And then Square Enix are just going to double down on it and make all the money on the back of it. So, it's good on them.
Yeah, exactly. Good for that.
Good for them. Good for them.
Did you guys see the trailer for this game called Kingmakers?
Yes. Oh my god.
Oh
It
my
looks
god.
so sick.
Okay, this, ladies and gentlemen, is a game to end all games, in my opinion. So for people listening, Kingmakers is an upcoming game, and the trailer, just look up the trailer. I shit you not. It looks like a fun dad game, RTS, like Mountain Blade,
Definite dad
armies,
game.
medieval armies, until suddenly you play as just a guy in a pickup truck with a gun. And you can run everybody over and shoot them with like grenade launchers and stuff. And I am so in for that game more than
So
anything.
good.
I just
Oh
don't know
my
what I
God.
expected because I saw that trailer make the rounds. And it was, I think, because the tweet from the dev is like very earnest. We've been working on this for 5+ years. We can finally show it. And I was like, oh, that's nice. I'll get around to it. And then I saw
was
someone else
boring.
quote tweet with, watch past the 23-second mark. And I was like, okay. And
But that was the thing. That was exactly the same because I saw all the hubbub and I'm like, I'm watching and I'm like, this looks kind of boring, I guess. Maybe it's like, because the strategy community, that really hardcore community, they love certain games from certain developers and they just they just froth them so hard. I'm like, oh, it must be another one of those games. Like they're all up in that. I'm like, okay, but then the 23-second mark hit and I'm like, let's go.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
dying with laughter the entire trailer. Like it was fantastic.
I played
so.
like 50 hours of Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord, and I was like, this
You
game
did?
needs drone strikes. Like it really needs drone strikes and like AR-15s.
Oh yes, it was very
Yeah.
special.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, keep your eyes peeled for that one. Anyway, this is the Friends Per Second podcast. We're already talking about video games. Look at us.
Look at
Can
us.
you believe us?
That's an upgrade from recent shows.
Yeah. This is episode 39 of the Every Other Week podcast, where a bunch of pals gather to talk about video games, and we bring in some other friends as well. I'm Jake Baldino. I'm joined, as always, by Lucy James. How are you?
Hello. I'm all right.
Oh,
I'm
right. is
okay.
good.
I'm tired. I've been playing. I mean, it's not like a boohoo woe is me. I've just been playing so much Final Fantasy that it's all I can think about. And while I'm very excited to be chatting with you boys, I'm like, I've got the planet to save. I've got Tifa to hang out with.
I get it.
Certainly do.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also joined by Ralph, aka Skill Up. How are you?
I'm feeling rejuvenated. I definitely pushed past the limit this past month in terms of just like sheer workload. And then the last 2 days, I went to bed early
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm going to sleep. Last night I slept 13 hours.
Hell yeah.
And I feel like a whole new man.
Mamma
I feel
mia.
absolutely fantastic. And this is actually when I'm kind of starting Final Fantasy now. Like I'm just getting going. I'm like chapter 2 or whatever. And so I feel really good about that, because if I had to go into like a 60 to 70 hour review while being completely exhausted, probably would not have enjoyed myself much. But feeling great. And chapter 1, God, I loved it so much. Chapter 2, I'm loving it so much. I'm so excited. Like just... Oh, I'm really looking forward to talking about that game when I finished it, because I am just, if it all holds as well as it's holding in this opening, God, it's fantastic. So excited.
Man, yeah, I'll get to that eventually. Just throw it on the pile, right? That's how it goes. Folks, we do have a very, very busy podcast. We have a chat first up with Andy Robinson, good old Andy from, he's editor-in-chief of VGC, Video Games Chronicle. Great website, get great scoops. I read them every day.
Yep.
I think we all do.
For sure.
Yep.
We had a lot of really good things with him. He has a lot of really good insight about basically everything in news lately, with Xbox announcing their third-party plans, what Nintendo is doing, what PlayStation is doing. It's a bit of a doomer downer state of the industry conversation.
It was a great conversation, but we were all just barely hanging on.
Yeah.
Like trying to crack your smiles and jokes, and then it was like,
Sure.
the
And I
world's
kept
on
trying
fire.
at the end to be like, "Welp, everybody, at least there's hope." And you guys kept being like, "No, there's not." And I'm like, "I'm trying to segue here." You
Sorry,
guys will
Jake.
hear that. We're gonna run that interview now. Andy, how you doing? Thanks for
Good.
being here. How are you?
Thank
man?
you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, it's been a long week, right?
Yes.
It's I feel like it should be like November time, but it's February, and we've had like it feels like we've been through the wars. We've had a ton of like good games already, but also a lot of like good news, bad news. It's moving quickly. It feels like 2023 part 2, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And you guys like over at VGC are covering it, man. You guys ran a fantastic operation there. Every like you guys are just so on top. Like, yeah, in terms of news coverage, I think you guys are really crushing it. I said that to you to your face in the past many times, but I'm saying it to you here now. Like, you guys really do put out a fantastic product in terms of like how consistently you are across the news.
Oh,
so,
thanks very much. It's very kind of you to say. I'm a big fan of yours as well. There's many.
It's not designed to trade. This is not designed to trade
many
compliments.
captures, screen captures on my phone of you guys saying complimentary things about VGC. So don't worry about that.
Excellent.
Well, there's a lot to dive into with rapid news in terms of the console stuff going on. So I think Xbox is probably the good place to start. Am I right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So with Xbox, they had their big official business event. Is that what they call it? Business podcast?
Business
Update.
update.
Business update event. Very sexy. Where we got a little bit more information about what their plans are. No more rumors and, speculation, but actual from the horse's mouth. And Ralph, I want to start with you. Just first reaction. Did it come off to you like, oh, business as usual, but a couple of tweaks? Or do you think there's a little more to it?
I mean, I think it's a very hard question to answer briefly, because I think it is business as usual ultimately, because I do think this is the overall direction that Xbox has been going in for a long time now, and this is a continuation of that strategy. But for me personally, that event was pretty nuff. There wasn't much going on there. There wasn't a lot said there, whatever. It was actually the stuff that was said outside of that event that I think was far more interesting, because at the event, Phil Spencer's like, oh, we're doing 4 games. We're not doing a massive change in strategy. Okay, what are the 4 games? It's these. And then the interviewer asked, like, oh, do those 4 games include Starfield and Indiana Jones? It's like, no, they don't. But he didn't say that it might not one day include those games. And then later on, when Phil Spencer is chatting to Steve Totillo of GameFile, he's like, he's talking about, it was the Verge thing, actually. It was the Verge
Tom
interview.
Warren?
Yeah, Tom Warren, sorry. And at that point, he's like, oh, we should never rule any particular game in or out when it comes to exclusives. And it's like, oh, okay, well, probably should have mentioned that in the business update, right? Because that sounds like a pretty juicy grab that you didn't put in there, So I think it was a very carefully orchestrated event that aimed to touch on certain points and kind of wind down some of the tension around this whole thing, but that ultimately, very subtly, did confirm a lot of what people were thinking about how Xbox's strategy is going to continue to evolve in the future. That was my vibe, you know? So I do think it is a similar journey that Xbox has been going on, and that will continue. And I don't think that Xbox is going to be playing the traditional console game that we've expected them to play for a while now. That era is officially over after this business event. So I do think it was actually a bit more significant than it seemed at first look. So yeah, but as I said, you had to look at everything else around that event and other things that were said to really make sense of it.
Yeah, I agree. It almost felt like it was very reactionary, right? Which is not like Xbox to be reactionary. It seems that's all they've been doing for the last 10 years.
Sure.
You know, it could have just been a statement. You know, could they have just put it out and said, "Oh no, you know, Starfield and Indiana Jones are not coming to PS5, but we'll have more news on games later." I don't think they needed to. They probably felt compelled to kind of do the big long podcast and speak for however long it was, like 20 minutes, you know, about different topics, just because of how the fan base reacted. But
well, that's also because of how they've cultivated. Cultivated. Jesus Christ, I can't think of words. Yeah, that's how they've cultivated talking to that fan base. And so the thing is when you said it could have been an email, it could have been a podcast. When I got the press release through, I thought, here we go. Here's the thing that could have been an email.
Here's the podcast.
And it said, go watch the bloody podcast.
Like you can imagine, like, I mean, obviously we're trying to look for the news. So where, you know, you do that, you kind of bounce between where's the summary, right? The Xbox Wire post that they had didn't really summarize all the points. And then to Ralph's point earlier, they kind of told in the interviews they did with The Verge and with Stephen Totilo, they kind of contradicted themselves a little bit.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like you have to read behind the lines with news, right? Like it a lot of this is just to manipulate the fans who are angry, who are just going to take them on face value, really. But essentially, they confirmed everything that was reported. I mean, nobody said, I mean, unless I'm wrong, the reports out, they didn't say Starfield was coming. They didn't say Indiana Jones was coming. It said that they were considering that, they're exploring that, they were working. That doesn't mean that they have to announce it today. You know, the fact that they are working on these 4 games, you don't do that without the window open to work on more, right? If these games are successful, this is a test, right? It screams test bed, these 4 games. Sea of Thieves makes complete sense. I'm surprised it hasn't been on PS5 sooner, to be honest. I mean, it's a live service game. It's a big community-driven game. Of course, it's going to help all of the players on Sea of Thieves and Xbox that there are, you know, kind of there's additional console base that their game's available to. The others, it's just a test, you know, like that's just kind of like you're trying to hook in another, or, you know, kind of user base into these great games that are on Xbox. These are some of Xbox's best games of like the last 18 months, right? You know, come and see how good Hi-Fi Rush is. Come and see how good Pentiment is. Then maybe they might be interested in a future one down the line. But yeah.
I think because specifically with the Totilo thing, because the interview with Phil Spencer, he was asked about Helldivers, right? And Phil Spencer then went on to say, "Oh, I don't know who benefits by not having this game on Xbox, you know?" And it's kind of like, well, you could fucking say that about Halo, like not being on PlayStation.
Literally just did a 20-minute orchestrated podcast telling us that Starfield is not coming and that it's really important.
Yes.
It's like, it's load of double speak, right? It's, oh no, this is very important, we're keeping it there. But also, oh, nobody has exclusives anymore. That's what he said. Like, there's barely any games out recently that are on one platform. Of course, why haven't we got Helldivers? You know, you've just bought a publisher for 70 billion, you know? And now you're complaining that it was an odd thing to say.
It was.
I mean, Phil Spencer is kind of like, I don't want to say a law unto himself, but he's very passionate. You can tell that, right? A lot of these interviews he would have pushed himself personally to go for. He would have wanted to have spoken to kind of, from his motivation to kind of allay some of the concerns in the community. But as we know, you know, kind of good experienced PR people usually would get involved and go, just don't say anything. Sometimes it doesn't
Don't
help.
say that don't complain that Helldivers 2 is not in your machine when you are not putting games on other people's machine. That is ridiculous.
He probably just came off of playing it because it's so good. He was probably on a high, on a Helldivers high.
PlayStation don't get into these issues because they don't speak.
Yeah. True. And Nintendo, I suppose.
Which is his own problem, right? I mean, we'd all prefer them to speak than not, but it's just a soft point.
Yeah. But coming back to your point, like it did seem very reactionary for them to do. Like they claimed this business update was planned since December, and it's like, were you really gonna get these 3 people up on a stage to announce that Pentiment is maybe coming to other platforms? I mean, it's just...
I don't even know if that was the plan, because they said that they're not announcing those 4 games because they want...
which is a point in itself, right? There's a Nintendo Partner Direct this week, which, according to certain journalists, was initially planned for last week and delayed after this business update was announced. So wouldn't it be interesting if half of these games are announced in that? Then...
Yeah, well, that's I definitely expect that to be the case for at least... Hi-Fi Rush, for sure.
Yeah. We should probably say, for context, we're recording this on the Tuesday before.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Before the partner
It was a brilliant partner direct, wasn't it? It was really good.
Oh, it was fantastic. I can't believe Metro
Can't believe Silk Song is finally coming. God, I'm so excited. But, yeah, no, it just seemed very odd that this event happened at all. The way that they talked about it, the circumspect nature of a lot of their wording. And then, like, for them to throw the whole, like, world's most powerful console Mark II to go out with that, I was like, don't talk about that.
Right? I mean, that was always they can't. You have to have the good news, right? You can't. You
have to say we're not leaving the console space completely. They also threw out like an updated Game Pass number. They were throwing things in there specifically for headlines, but it's not the stuff that people are wanting to hear right now. Like that Game Pass number is fantastic. Good to see.
But that includes Game Pass Core now, right?
Yeah,
that number?
Yeah,
it's a cheeky number because it's basically just converting a bunch of Xbox Live people to Game Pass and then calling it growth.
Phil claimed that it was a small number. The number of the core users moving over represented a small portion of the growth. He claimed it was mostly PC and mobile, but obviously we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean...
What a weird event.
I just kind of ended up feeling not like I didn't feel like a needle has been moved much. I think before it being an official thing or anything being said, people were expecting, I mean, even our conversation last week was a lot more big picture focused, where I watched this and I tried to just watch it as like, I mean, I guess I am like a normie, and I watched it and afterwards I was like, what did you guys say? What is going on? I feel like it just, the way they speak, and then the way the event went down, and then the way Phil Spencer spoke in The Verge and stuff, I kind of felt in the similar place that I've been with when they acquired X, when they acquired Y, and we were in those conversations like, oh, is this going to stay exclusive? Is that going to stay exclusive? People would joke and be like, of course they bought it, but we've had those conversations because of the way they speak and the way they kind of have a very careful way of wording things. And I just kind of felt like that was the, normal standard thing here that we've had before.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's talking about the 2,000 layoffs.
No.
Yeah, true.
Jeez, yeah.
Well, I mean, that was also another thing where like Phil's like, well, our industry needs to grow, and it didn't. And so that's why we had to lay off people. And it's kind of like, well, Microsoft just became like the second company in the world to achieve $1 trillion valuation or $3 trillion valuation. I mean, Microsoft's making money hand over fist right now, and like,
I didn't like that. Their gaming business is not.
Sure, but I mean, I wonder how profitable it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not exactly sure about that. I don't know. I just didn't quite like that framing, especially because when they did those layoffs, they were more talking about the fact that there were overlaps between Activision Blizzard and Microsoft, which you can understand naturally. Like, there's going to be some overlaps. Sure, that logically makes sense. And it's like, that's what they said when they made those cuts. But now to say, well, we made those cuts because the business isn't growing or the industry isn't growing. It's like, well, which one is it? You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't like that. But my question,
it's been a bit disappointing few months in general, isn't it? I mean, and this kind of bleeds into the PlayStation stuff that we'll get to, but it's just it just feels grim, doesn't it? I just feel like I've been bracing myself for 6 months, just bracing for the worst all the time.
I mean, I was at DICE last week.
Oh, and I heard it was just miserable, right?
It was miserable the entire time because, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, if your studio hasn't had cuts, you're kind of bracing for them. If your studio has had cuts, you're bracing for more.
Yeah.
Same on the media side of things, same on PR too, and publishing side. It was, and then you have an event like this where talking about the future, but also not talking about the real human cost of everything so far, and no real, I don't know, didn't feel like there was any kind of hope to look forward to.
Honestly, yeah. I'm finding it really difficult to be excited about much at the moment. I mean, probably, again, something else we'll get to, the you know, kind of the next Nintendo console was something to be optimistic for this year. And then now that looks like that's gone. It's, I mean, even you know, kind of the stuff that's coming out of the PlayStation's earnings, it was very much pointing towards them making their own cuts. It's and I don't even know where all these jobs are going to go. You know, like, I mean, there's one of the biggest games industry job agencies in the UK, OPM. They've been around for 25 years. They just closed. They didn't like fold. They just decided that we're wasting our time operating in this market right now.
Really?
A few weeks ago.
That seems so surprising because obviously they would have had a lot of business during the COVID period, right?
Yeah.
Like there a lot of placements. And then if it's a 25-year business, you'd imagine that they'd sort of been able to sustain this downturn, which, you know, has been. I mean,
you don't know the full motivations behind it, do you? I mean,
sure.
When you know, people start businesses to sell them at some point, right? You're not going to do it forever. So of 25 years, I'm sure it was like 25 years that was running. You know, maybe it's like, look, this doesn't look like it's going to turn around for a couple of years, which it probably isn't. Do I want to bunker down and sit through that and come out the other end and build again, or do I just want to take the money and call it a day? What's left? So
survive till 25.
That's all completely speculation, though. I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, anyway, miserable. Let's talk about the games industry.
Should we move on to PlayStation?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, so Sony's had a lot of headlines talking about PlayStation, things that came out of, I believe, their earnings call, with the biggest phrase being that the PS5 is entering the later stage of its life cycle. Lucy, what's your takeaway on that? There's definitely a little more to that.
That feels insane to me. I mean, that feels insane to me. But I guess time has moved differently. I think the biggest thing about the Sony stuff is, the reaction to that, the fact that it is moving into the latter half of its life cycle, the fact that they're coming out with the PS5 Pro model, it feels like a very contracted life cycle for this console. I mean,
it's the pandemic, right? It's to your initial point. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. And one of the reasons it doesn't feel like it's been that long is back to what Big Phil was saying, is that there aren't really any console exclusives anymore, especially what Sony was promising pre-launch. We believe in generations, etc., etc. That kind of didn't come to fruition, and partly, not their fault. They couldn't have, kind of made as many consoles as they wanted to. It doesn't feel like it's been running for that long. And I do think that probably a lot of consumers right now are not feeling like they're getting itchy, right? I mean, you think about PS4. Definitely by this point, this point in PS4's life cycle, like 2017, 2018 sort of time, it was loud,
this was
noisy.
Stride.
And, you just trying to load the games, the thing sounded like it was going to explode. I mean, PC was already...
Pro would come out, right?
Pro was coming out like now. The mid-gen refreshes was about now. It doesn't feel like we need a mid-gen refresh, right?
It felt good.
Oh, games right? But I mean, the hardware, you were feeling like, I can see how we could conceivably move on in 3-4 years, right?
Yeah.
I don't really feel that.
Yeah, I got my Pro for God of War, actually. So that would have been April 2018. So I think, you're totally right. But even that, it had a reason, right, to sell that. Yeah. It was, you can play your games upscale to 4K. Great, cool. Exactly. I've got a new 4K TV. That benefit is not so clear now. I don't know what they would do. I also don't know, because loading times?
No,
non-existent.
Yeah. We don't. More HDR. extra HDR.
The battery controller lasts more than 15 minutes. That's going to be the upgrade.
I mean, some of the speculation was that they might do like a ray trace, like an enhanced ray tracing type thing, which maybe they could get me to pay for.
I mean, that's...
You know,
yeah, I don't know. I'd be very surprised.
But it's not as clear as cell as 4K, right? I mean, people would have 4K TVs. They understand what UHD is. That was a clear upsell. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah. So technically, they're right. I think a lot of the discourse around this quote in the earnings call, I'm not sure if it was a misquote or not that some of the sites picked up on, but certainly the quote that I transcribed that we were running with what was that it was entering the same PS5 was entering the latter stages, the latter half of its life cycle, whereas some other sites reported latter stages, which obviously, as many people do these days, consuming their news just on a tweet, and I'm not going to read the rest of the context. What do you mean it's ending? Sure. But it kind of it is in the latter half, right? I mean, it's been out for 4 years this year. 2028 we're going to have new consoles, but it'll be interesting to see what they look like, because the other thing that came out of this, one of many things that came out of this earnings call, was that they were making the point that these consoles are not getting cheaper to make. Unlike the last generation was the last generation where we had that advantage where manufacturing the Sysmon chips for these consoles would gradually get cheaper. They're not cheaper. Like the newer Sysmon chips, I don't know the technical details, but the ones that the Xbox Series and the PS5 have, they're not getting cheaper. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these problems now, you know, like to try and, I mean, 25 million consoles is what they were trying to sell this year, Sony, which was like a super ambitious number. And they plan to do that with discounting, basically, like they're aggressively discounting. And that's hurt them now. You know, they said they're going to miss their target by 4 million, which is a lot. If to angry shareholders, that is a lot, even though it's still like a super impressive number. And it's a double-edged sword. They've done that by discounting the hardware, which is not getting cheaper. So it does make you wonder that, especially with, you know, something's got to give, basically, right? I mean, the biggest takeaway for me on the Sony earnings calls was their profit versus their revenue. Now, I might get this wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway, and someone can tell me that I'm wrong. I believe they made something like $10 billion in revenue for this quarter, and it's a Christmas quarter, so it's a big one. And from that 10 billion, they made 600 million profit. So to make 600 million, they've got to generate 10 billion. Like, that is pretty unsustainable now, because they're getting on both ends, right? Games are getting more expensive to make. They're taking longer to make. Hardware is always has been a loss leader, and the audiences are not growing. So this is the thing: is that something's got to give. And this is Xbox and PlayStation. Is there even need to make cheaper games, which is what Sean Layden was saying 5-6 years ago. You know, the ex PlayStation US boss, that. You know, I mean, he's not Messiah. Lots of people would know this, but he was saying it openly in public that it's unsustainable, AAA development budgets. I mean, on PS4, when they're already paying 100 million plus, and we now know that, Horizon Forbidden West and the Spider-Man games on PS5, they cost like $250, $300 million to make, you know. So if you're paying that sort of money to make a game, you kind of need it to go to the biggest audience possible, which is why they're also making noises now about pushing more aggressively into PC.
Look at the success of Helldivers.
Exactly. That is only going to accelerate the point, I imagine. I mean, there's only people are only speculating, but because you don't have the actual numbers outside of Steam. But I saw some suggestion that PlayStation makes up a really small fraction of those, you know, half a billion. Or 500,000 even, players, concurrent players that are there.
That makes sense. I think that genre in particular really lends itself to like PC shenanigans. I feel it's just got a lot of PC vibes, but yeah, I guess also PC players are just kind of crowding the servers at this point. Yeah. So
and not logging off, so that other people
not
can't
logging off. Exactly right. Just leave your PC in idle. But
I mean, that talk about unsustainability, and the other thing from the earnings call that is, I mean, I saw it on a great website, VGC. It was the headline: Sony
I'm glad
president
it was worth
wants
me getting up at 6 a.m. to write that.
Sony president wants Bungie to be better at assuming accountability for development timelines too.
It's funny that was misquoted at the beginning. That was like,
I was about to say, do you know what's really interesting about that story? Because I believe I wrote the original one. Now, you can say it's a misquote. Basically, so it was Sony's own live translation, right? They removed Bungie from the live translation. I mean, there could be a myriad of reasons for that, right? Japanese is like one of the hardest languages to translate on the fly, especially on audio, because there's not much context in it.
Yeah.
You know, you're missing context on it. If you're sat in front of someone, you kind of like get what they're talking about a bit more, the nuance. So it's understandable that you get a better translation with time and what have you. But yeah, the live translation, Bungie was not mentioned by Sony's translators. It was broad, like, our studios need to get better at, I think they said like development timelines and how they manage their money and blah, blah. But yeah, they put out a transcripts on their investor website today. And it's just laying into Bungie, basically.
Yeah.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
That is pretty rough. Calling them out. I mean, they were asked, so it's not like they were just offering a sermon from the mount on Bungie. They were asked specifically, what do you think about Bungie? And they're like, well, here's what we think. We think they need to be more accountable with development timelines. But yeah, there's definitely got a sting for Bungie, who right now are really, I would imagine, are up against it because they've got Final Shape coming out. They've got a lot riding on that. They've already had to delay that. They had the layoffs before, which were ruinous for morale. That has got to be very tough for them. I'm very sure.
I'll tell you what I find interesting is the reporting recently around there are certain like clauses in their contracts about the management of the studio, because they had layoffs recently, and I think it might have been IGN. Forgive me if it wasn't.
It was, yeah. It was.
That allegedly that decision was motivated by them hitting certain like not dropping below certain targets, so that they continued to have control of the studio. So
because Sony can swoop in.
Yeah, so if you were wrestling with that, you probably slagged them off in your investor call, right? They're rubbish. They need to get better. They need to get better. Their business, literally, they're talking about business, right? They need to be better at business, I think was a rough quote. They need to be better at managing their timelines and their money. That's the sort of thing you'd say if you're getting ready to, jump in and make to justify your kind of getting involved with this historically very successful studio, which allegedly not so long ago was, kind of advising all their live service games. I wonder if they're going to have Arrowhead coming in now to advise on Bungie's live service games.
And then they play Final Shape and Arrowhead's like, you know what? This isn't going to work. It's not very good, guys.
I don't know if you're going to keep players for the long term on this one.
I think for me personally, a lot of this talk about it being at the latter end of the life cycle, or the latter half, or what have you. Do you guys see this Donkey video this week?
Oh, I haven't seen it.
I didn't watch it yet, but I saw
Yes, it's basically a video that talks about PlayStation 5's exclusives and how there's not many of them, firstly, and a lot of them are sequels or re-releases that feel quite similar to games that came before, or just straight up remasters, And it's kind of like, how many really big new exclusive Sony games have we had this past generation?
It's pretty damning, isn't it?
It's, you know what I mean? Like, what's the Naughty Dog game this generation?
So if you see behind me, I've got a Virtual Boy, right?
Sure.
And I've got the majority of the Japanese library for it there. I think there's 18 games. So I've got about 11 there. That's more than PS5.
That's more than the current lineup.
Because that's the meme going round, is Virtual Boy had more exclusive games. I mean, there's a reason for that, because you're not really porting your Virtual Boy games to Super Nintendo, right? It requires you to strap something onto your face.
Sure.
So, and it comes from a different time. So a bit unfair, but also makes a valid point. Is again coming back to what Phil Spencer was saying, like when he's basically saying like you guys are kind of getting angry at us, but there are no console exclusives really now.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it comes back to that point we were talking about earlier, which is if it costs $300 million to make a game in 6 years, you can realistically expect each studio to put out 1.5 exclusives per generation, which is wild. Like that's crazy at this point, and that just seems straight up. When you say it like that, when you say it a variety of other ways, it just seems clear that is not sustainable.
And it's disappointing just from a fan's perspective. I mean, I'm going to have my old man moment. But do you remember the Mark Cerny tech talk before the PS5 launched?
Oh, yeah.
He spent like, I don't know how long it was, but it was a significant amount of time with a presentation showing why being exclusive to PS5 mattered from a game design point of view. You know, this is how, you know, the super fast SSD in the PlayStation 5 is going to change how games are made. They literally can, you know, he showed how they built environments on every console, you know, with sightlines and stuff, right? And you now don't have to worry about that. You can have a big environment as you want. How, you know, they had to put
Tempest audio
a trash can, you know, 100 times on the memory of Spider-Man because it had to be loaded in wherever you are in the environment. About how now on PS5 you can literally stream the graphics faster than the camera moves, right? So getting fidelity to the level where you don't even have to. I mean, I know a lot of games work like that, but to an even more, you know, on the razor's edge line of streaming graphical data, and. I remember that talk and I was pretty excited about it. And then it's like, well, and now all of our games are on PS4. And I understand, you know, why they did that. And everyone does. And no one's questioning the quality of their first party games because they're usually like bangers, guaranteed bangers, all of them, Sony's first party stuff. But it doesn't help you, you know, stop me wondering like what could have been, right? You know, so if God of War Ragnarok is like this with these huge environments and, you know, these beautiful characters, what would it have looked like if they didn't have to squeeze it onto a PS4?
What is XDev doing this generation? Like XDev seemed to be the kind of, I don't know. I mean, I guess technically last Naughty Dog was through XDev, but the like PlayStation, they used to have like kind of, I don't know, the smaller
it's annoying me that I can't recall that. They've definitely been doing stuff.
Yeah, right? Like I don't know. I just, you know, this whole conversation, I love you boys, but it's doom and gloom as hell, right?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, and you know, it makes you think back to the halcyon days of, I think, you know, PlayStation 3 and certainly PlayStation 4, where it just felt like the industry was, I mean, maybe not PS3, but PS4, it was like, industry is unstoppable. Sony is unstoppable. Sure. And now it feels like we are at the top of a roller coaster. And we are about to see something that
but maybe that's 2008, a good thing, right? Maybe that's a good thing because we've been in this arms race, right?
Yeah.
Where games need to look better and be bigger. Like, I mean, I watched the you know, the Last of Us Part 2 documentary they just brought out.
I haven't seen it yet.
And there's a Neil Druckmann sits down with the team and he's like, right, you know, we've I think they shipped Uncharted 4, and they're like, you know, Uncharted 2 is Last of Us Part 2 is going to be roughly double the size of the first game. And I'm sat there thinking, why? I remember playing that game, right? And being like 10 hours in and thinking, this is too long now. Like you could have made your like
you still had 15 hours to go, my friend.
Again, like something else that Sean Layden said, you know, 5-6 years ago. These games, we've got our audience into this state where they equate value with length, right? And it's not the same thing at all. Like these games are big. I mean, I don't know when this podcast is going out, but there's a certain game at the moment that everyone's playing that is stupidly humongous.
We can talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
It's ridiculous.
This is going out after the Final Fantasy embargo is out, so we're allowed to say the Final Fantasy embargo is the Final Fantasy Rebirth is very long.
I mean, I've not played it, but Jordan's been playing it, and he's like, all he's been doing for the last 2-3 weeks is like going, it's still going, it's still going, it won't end. Sure. You know, that is how we've got the games industry has got itself into this situation, especially the platform holders, where they feel like they have to, especially PlayStation, right? Where the home of blockbusters, that's what they are. That's what their brand has been built on now. You spend $500 on a PS5 and then spend a couple of $100 more on your headsets and your controllers because that's what you're buying into. You're not getting those elsewhere. You're not getting these stupidly humongous games. Yeah. But now this is the medicine, right? That needs to be taken. And you look at something like Helldivers. I mean, I've only played it for a little while. I think it looks pretty ropey. Like it doesn't certainly doesn't look like a Naughty Dog game, right? Or an Insomniac game. But it's fun as hell. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah. It's really great at what it is.
Yeah. Well, do you think that's maybe part of the reason why it's standing out? Is there some argument to be made that some of the PS5, and we're talking about its releases and stuff, it's still kind of in the shadow of the PS4? I mean, the way I look at it is like the heavy hitters right now on PlayStation 5 is a Spider-Man sequel, a God of War sequel, even stuff from the previous generation like Ghost of Tsushima is like still pretty top of mind. So there's only a couple of standout new things for PS5, like Returnal, which is fantastic, but I don't think that has like the mainstream appeal. So it's almost like the PS5 is still catching up. And then weird little things come out like Helldivers, and people are like, holy shit, this is that new sound we're looking for.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. My hope with all of this stuff is that you've got these massive AAA teams that are really talented and they have resources. And my hope is that Sony is going to start greenlighting some smaller projects that come out of those teams. I remember, obviously Blizzard went through this themselves those years ago when they, split themselves up into multiple units, and they had Team 5, I think it was called, that did Hearthstone, you know what I mean? And off it went. And obviously Hearthstone had its time, and it's not in its time right now, sure, whatever, but there was a spirit of experimentation that the studio unleashed, and it resulted in some big and successful things. I mean, even Overwatch was kind of part of that. And
Team 4, baby.
The remains of their failed MMO push became Overwatch, which was huge, you know? So I don't know. I hopefully this model doesn't exist in this way. Everyone's been saying forever that AAA is unsustainable. Everyone's been saying it. But now it just seems like it's too self-evident to ignore that, because it's just hitting the financials. It's hitting release cadences. It's resulting in layoffs. It's seeing Sony's actual profit margins shrink to absurd levels. So it's like, well, they can't ignore that forever. And what are they going to do? Are they going to stop making games? No, they can't. I think they've got to start making some other bets. And hopefully they direct themselves in that, because you can't just hope for Spider-Man 3 to save the industry.
I imagine they're going to carry on down the path that Jim Ryan has kind of set them in, which is they're going to put out all these live service games, doubly so now that Helldivers has done so great, and they're going to release more games on PC. It's the low hanging fruit, basically. Like, if you want to expand your audience, that's what you do. And you have to look at, especially these days, what's really changed since the pandemic, big time, is that fewer bigger games have sucked up the audience. Like, there's been a lot of really great medium-sized games, or what you'd call medium-sized games, in the last 18 months that have failed. Like what's the XCOM Marvel game?
Oh, Midnight Suns.
Like that. And then Mario Rabbids didn't do so well. And then you can keep, there's countless examples of stuff like that kind of got left because and meanwhile your EA's doing fine because they got FIFA Ultimate Team. Take-Two are doing fine because they got GTA Online. Ubisoft are scrambling to get one of their own. I mean, if you've got one of those big games, I mean, EA got Apex as well, then you're kind of all right. And it's interesting, actually. I've not heard many people talk about this, because in the PS4 generations, I was told a couple of times that Sony deliberately stayed away from that type of game because they didn't want to cannibalize the third-party publishers, basically. It's like, where everyone plays GTA Online or Call of Duty on our platform anyway. So what we'll do is we'll make the big single player games that they don't want to make. And then we've got a complete kind of offering on our platform. But obviously, I guess that's where it's kind of led them to where we are now.
Yeah, the thing is, I just think, logically it makes sense to think, let's just invest in live services, and that's how we'll be able to get through this, whatever. But because obviously it makes sense that if you get recurring revenue out of these titles, but I just think the story is, history has shown repeatedly that it is so difficult to crack that, right? And if the game plan is, let's release 12 live services, knowing that 11 of them will fail, but if one of them pays off in the same way that Apex does or FIFA does, then it gives us a sustainable base that we can then use to, fund other activities. Okay, fair enough, I guess. Maybe, maybe that makes sense on some level. But it just seems like a really, really long bet, with bad odds to go down that path. Whereas you could be trying to build out a portfolio of really interesting, cool titles that do pretty damn well, also have your bigger stuff, keep your live service studios doing their thing because they're already good at it. Obviously, you've got Bungie, and now you've got Arrowhead that's standing up their capabilities over time. I don't know, man. I just think when I hear Sony's working on 12 live service games simultaneously, or they were at least in the last time we heard, it just seems like fool's gold to me, especially just this month. We've had Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones both go belly up. you know, the same. And before that, it was Last of Us Online cancelled. After
I mean, I was going to mention that. I mean,
at
least that's quite reassuring, right? That it is reassuring to see that they'll go, you know what, we don't think this is working out.
Yeah.
Don't work on that game anymore. You know, go do what you're good at. Do single player stuff. It kind of indicates that at least they're not going to, you know, have a skull and bones situation where it's coming out no matter what. You know, reboot it 4 times until this thing is out.
I'm intrigued to see. One of the things we haven't really talked about is, you know, we have this a load of well-seasoned veteran developers leaving big places like Respawn, leaving places like Sledgehammer and COD to go set up their new thing. So we have this like whole, like, That's No Moon, Gravity Well. We have these studios with all of this veteran talent, and I'm just like, first of all, where's your money coming from? Especially at this point. But also, what are you working on? Like, if you leave somewhere like Sony or a place where you've just been working on something like COD or Apex for years, do you want to stay in that space? Do you want to try something new?
I think that's natural. I think it's always been like that as well. Like, you can trace back loads of studios, like big studios from 10, 15 years ago would have been people who left Bullfrog or Lionhead, or, you know, they would have left those guys from the 90s. You know, I mean, when I worked at Playtonic, which was founded by the ex-Rare guys, I mean, I saw some of the motivation myself of this is how that sort of thing comes about. And making games is like something that is, especially these days, right? You have the tools, anyone can make a game. So if you're an experienced game developer and you work at one of the big companies, you know, first of all, they're creative people. They've all got tons of ideas. I'd love to make a game like this. I'd love to make a game like that. You know, but you're at the whim of what gets greenlit by the big corporation who owns you, and, you know, who's looking at spreadsheets, right? So you've got the ideas, but they're also empowered now. Anyone can, you know, go and set up their own. They can go and make a game. The problem is the same problem that I had when I did VGC, is that you just need someone to pay your salary for a bit, right, until it becomes an actual business. So, I mean, the way they do that could be a myriad of things. I know, obviously at Playtonic, we did a Kickstarter. And we were lucky because they did have a kind of an existing fan base, the games they worked on. We could kind of kickstart that, and it just needed to pay everyone's wages until we got it out, and then you kind of move on from there. I think that's something that's always been going on. I mean, they're also, you know, it's entrepreneurship, right? Like, tons of these big independent studios that got bought by you know, publishers were started by just some kids at Lionhead or something. You know, you look at like Media Molecule, for example. Those were like Lionhead, Bullfrog guys. It's so that feels pretty natural. I think it's good. That's where the good games come from, right? I mean, you're seeing tons of like Blizzard spin-offs now.
Like Stormgate?
Yeah. Like, I'm certain that all of the good stuff's going to go. I mean, Nightingale's just launched today. That's Aaron Flynn, the ex-BioWare boss. Like, I've not seen how it's done, but the last I looked, it had like 300,000 views on Twitch, like, after
it was like number 2 on Twitch. I saw the tweet about it. It was like number 2 on Twitch, and immediately, like, just straight out the gate, which is awesome.
Survival games, baby.
And that's the thing, though. Like, what I'm saying is,
it's a sure bet.
We kind of always had that, but like, what's it going to be like in this climate? You know, there's so much talent out there that's free and that maybe do want to start their own studio, but like, is the money there? And what are we losing from that?
The difficulty you have now that you didn't have then is just how crowded it is, right? I mean, now that everything's moved so aggressively over to digital, the advantage you had having like a console deal or something, like even 10, 15 years ago, was that they had guaranteed retail space. And that's massive. Your games are going to be on store shit on the Walmart, and they're going to be in a good place. And so you've got a huge advantage. Whereas now, how many tens of thousands of games release on Steam every year? Like thousands and thousands. Like, I don't want to. I did actually have the number in my head last week, but it's tens of thousands. And they're now all on the same shelf space as you, because the physical retail thing is just gone. You know, that doesn't apply anymore. You're all on the same stores, and you know, even if a small fraction of those games are good, right? You know, look at Power World.
Oh yeah.
Suddenly you're competing with that like 30-man team who, you know, kind of made the game off their own backs.
Yeah, things are definitely changing. I think at least there's some hope with what you guys are saying, with some talent being out there, and sometimes we are getting the better games from the smaller models. But just to move on and briefly also talk about Nintendo, what's their deal? So it seemed like from headlines, it was, possibly a holiday 2024 thing for the Switch 2. Now sources are saying that the Nintendo Switch 2 will launch in 2025. So is that something that was originally the plan altogether? Or do you guys think maybe this is a reaction to just the climate, the industry, the economics of the world right now? Where does it land?
Well, I don't think it's a reaction, because the best time to launch a Switch 2 would be this year, I think, if they could, because they're the other platforms are in a bit of a lull. It's GTA 6 is on the horizon. You don't want to be, that is there aren't many actual system sellers left these days, but that is a system seller. You don't really want to be launching around then. This year's pretty spot on for them, so I don't think it's something that they've done tactically. So we reported the late 2024 date last year. That was our story. So that it was something that I understand they were planning to do. But it's interesting that even at the time, that didn't sound right. It didn't sound like something that historically fits with what Nintendo would probably be planning to do strategically with a console now, because they launched Switch in March 2017, and their whole strategy behind Switch and why it was so massively successful at the gate is that they planned to have basically all of their big hitters in the first year. I mean, I don't have it at the top of my head, but go and look at what games they had out on Switch in the first year. It's ridiculous. It's like they had a different first-party game every month.
The greatest.
1-2 Switch. No, I mean, they definitely have Breath of the Wild and Odyssey.
They launched with Breath of the Wild, one of the best games ever. Then Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah.
Odyssey.
And Odyssey was in
They
October.
had like Mario Rabbids. There was a Xenoblade in there. Yep. There was a Pokemon game like the next year. Smash Bros. Was the next year. Splatoon was in there. It's ridiculous, right? That's their whole strategy was, after Wii U, let's just go all in, make sure all of the big franchises are there. And Nintendo's all about going into that first Christmas and having a really strong lineup. And it worked incredibly well, right? So that's why even people that I was speaking to, like in the industry, when I reported that story or before I reported that story, were like, are you sure? Like, that doesn't sound like, why would they follow that up and then go late in the year? Because they'd have more pressure in terms of that kind of lineup. So in that sense, it's kind of not surprising that the what I'm hearing, what we reported on VGC, it was broken by a Brazilian journalist, Pedro Henrique. So congratulations to him on breaking that. It's now been corroborated by tons and tons of people. But they basically, this was an open secret. It sounded like this usually is what happens when I break a story, is that everyone already knows already. It's just I'm the guy who's going out and going, I'm going to say it. So it sounded like they briefed publishers recently about the 2025 thing, but they wouldn't have briefed them why. One person suggested to me that it could be because they wanted a stronger first-party software lineup, which is what they said they need to have, right? I mean, I think they're going to have a Mario Kart. I think they're going to have a 3D Mario. It's all going to be there. There'll be like a second-tier Zelda game, like a Grezzo-style one. There'll be like a Pokemon of some kind. I mean, they definitely had the next big Pokemon in the works for the next Nintendo console. I don't know what that means with the console slipping, whether that goes or what. But yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, even if you look at Wii U, if they'd have delayed Wii U, I mean, this was something that someone mentioned on social media the other day, and it's really interesting. If they'd have delayed Wii U to the following like March, the first year would have been absolute wall-to-wall bangers.
Yeah.
Because the problem they had with that is they launched, before Christmas, and they kind of had Nintendo Land, a new Super Mario U, and then you had to kind of wait, and then you had the other stuff next year. And really good games, but they were just spaced out.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I don't think it really makes any difference for us as consumers. Like, it would have been nice to be able to play a Nintendo console at the end of the year, but we're still going to buy it when it comes out in March, if it comes out then. And if it's got this existing library of games, like if it does have a new Mario Kart and a new mainline Mario game in the same year, I mean, That's it already.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it will. I think it will.
Do you know what I mean? That's insane to even imagine that.
I don't think it's great for the games industry because I think we're kind of like, I mean, you look at what we're the doom and gloom that we're talking about here. I think just the market, just purely the market could have done with a boost. I also think we need some innovation as well. I mean, Christopher Dring on GI.biz wrote a great piece earlier today, which was basically pointing out how, you know, the audience, the console audience, you know, Xbox and PlayStation are, you know, scrambling to expand their audience because it's not growing, but they've effectively put out the same consoles they did last generation, right? You need your Switch moment, your Wii moment, your Kinect moment even to bring in new people into this audience because older people kind of go on to other stuff like across the entire market and young people don't necessarily come in. We are kind of like a little bit desperate right now for a Wii Switch moment, Kinect moment even, you know, just to bring in some new ideas, a new audience to reinvigorate the console market, I think. So I do hope that...
You reckon? That seems... What are you saying? Like some new tech that kind of...
A new idea. It's not good. It's not... That's what brings new people into games, right? You need a Wii Sports moment, right? People who bought Xbox and PS5 already had the last one. Nobody's bought a PS5 like, oh, I'm going to get that, who didn't buy it. Spider-Man? You know, like The Last of Us remastered. Yeah, I'm going to go for it. The last generation was the most important generation because you built your digital libraries. That's why Xbox has struggled. I mean, and Phil Spencer's talked about that as well, because once you've got that, I mean, you can see it in everywhere, you know, all entertainment mediums that we use, right? If you own stuff there, you're kind of like, they've got you, you know, and then people play with their friends. So that's why it's so difficult. So that does make me suspect, because Nintendo's been hinting quite a lot about Nintendo accounts, and that's our big plan for, you know, kind of avoiding the boom and bust we usually have after a good console. So I do wonder if backwards compatibility might be a big thing on the new Switch. You know, you've got your digital games come over and maybe that might be a thing, but I do hope it's not just another, you know, more powerful Switch. I mean, I don't think it will be, but I hope they've got a new idea, something fresh, like beyond just, it's a Steam Deck that you can dock on your TV.
What could it possibly be? Like Smell-O-Vision?
You want my
I've
guess,
done
right?
that before and it wasn't fun.
Yeah, I want all of your guesses.
My guess, and it is a guess, is that I think it will be like a Steam Deck. You know Nate the Hate, right? The podcast that he does with MVG, he always puts up bits and pieces, and it's usually what I've heard. So I don't know whether that makes either of us more credible, but I'll just say that. Like, I don't think it'll have Joy-Cons. I think it'll basically be a Steam Deck that you can dock. And my guess, right, is that when before Switch came out, the Switch technology was already there. It's just it wasn't mainstream and people weren't talking about it because a Switch is basically an NVIDIA Shield, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's an NVIDIA Shield. So they're Nintendo's like hardware, their R&D guys will be like, oh, that's interesting. I have a meeting with them, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same with like the Wii. The technology behind the Wii, the gyroscopes, the guy who had that pattern, he sold, like, peddled that around everyone. Like, I'm pretty sure that other platform holders turned him down. And then Nintendo went, oh, okay, we'll have that. So it's usually stuff that's just out there, like the kind of historically that fuels their innovation, right? Mm. So I wonder if they might just do a Switch with a bit of a spin. So it's a Switch and a Wii U, the two concepts combined, right? And this is something that I think Nate the Hate mentioned. And it was something that I was also thinking. Imagine instead of docking it, that you could wirelessly kind of dock it. Mm. So you have your Steam Deck control, your Wii U controller, your Switch without Joy-Cons. And if you're going to play on TV, you just press a button and it goes on the TV. It's streaming to some sort of dongle or something. So then, not only is that a cool little gimmick, but now we're back to dual screen, which Nintendo loves dual screen.
Yeah,
right? They've been forced to leave dual screen kind of design just in this last generation. And that'd be cool, right? I'm excited already thinking that. That's a cool idea. I'm going to be disappointed when it's not. They'll do all kinds of gimmicks as well. Then it'll be like, oh, here's a Mario Kart, dual screen Mario Kart again. Because Wii U, right? I liked Wii U. It wasn't executed properly. And Switch kind of proves that, right? You look how well the games have sold, and everyone loves the concept. But it's like as soon as you moved like half a meter away from your sofa with that controller, you got a signal loss, and it didn't work. And those early games which had promise, like Nintendo Land and stuff, which is a very underrated game, they kind of like ditched the concept and just like after the first year, all the games on Wii U, first party games, like the gamepad was like, there's nothing going on it. It was just, you turn it off basically.
Yeah.
So I think there's something in that. You don't seem
I think it'd be
convinced,
interesting.
Ralph.
I'd like it, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I don't imagine that that's going to be the kind of thing that is going to revitalize the console market and create a whole new category of consumers.
But it's just, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about like the invention, something revolutionary, like inventing VR or the Wii remote or something. I just mean an idea, a spark.
I mean,
it's Nintendo. When
but you can also
if I sat
kind
here
of do
right
that
now,
with your smartphones now.
But it's again, right? Is that Nintendo takes this existing technology, right? If I sat here and told you the concept of the Switch where it launched and the concept of the Wii, it wouldn't sound exciting, right? Because this is what Nintendo do. Like, imagine if you had a console, you could take, okay, yeah, but I've got my phone, I've got my Vita, handheld gaming's dead. Like, what, moving a thing to control a game? How's that going to work? Nintendo, the reason Nintendo are so successful is because they make software and hardware together, right? They're a toy company. They make these amazing creations. You don't see that hardware and go, this is great. They need to sell it to you with a game.
Well,
like me sat there telling you, wouldn't it be great if you could put it on the TV at the same time? That's not the same as them going, here's this Mario Kart with this amazing, like, innovative idea. Oh, wow, that looks really cool.
Yeah, but it's also how do they approach and how do they change it up? How do they implement it for a family and the living room? Because
that's the thing.
That's
what I was going to say.
And that's always the part that's hard to predict.
Where it's like the one of the things that obviously got people into the Wii and again for the Switch was, what is the thing that you sell to the parents who don't game? And that was the weight loss stuff. That was the fitness stuff. That was Wii Fit, Ring Fit.
Olivia Newton-John, baby.
Olivia Newton-John.
That's right. That's right.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
I made myself sad. But no, I mean, that's the thing that kind of gets outside of our bubble and does permeate into a broader, like my mum was even like, oh my God, a Wii Fit? Should we get one? Never did, by the way, Lynn. But it's like taking those concepts and making a game. Like they released the Ring Fit and they just did one game with it. Like,
yeah, that was really cool.
And it also couldn't have hit at a better time for them because everyone was locked inside for the pandemic. And
they kind of, you need a gimmick to get people in. You gotta get a gimmick. Right? I mean, even like Astrobot is still my favorite PS5 game.
Oh,
hell yeah!
That is a fantastic game.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's
awesome, right?
Game. It's one of those where it's like you fall into this trap every console generation, and I imagine it will happen less and less in future when they're just PCs. But when you're like, wow, if this is the first game, what are the future games going to do with these features? With the 3DS is 3D, and the Xbox One's kind of HD rumble that it had, and all this stuff that just never gets used again. Yeah. We've got you in. And now we're porting our games to PlayStation 4 and PC.
But you get that haptic feedback and you control it.
To be fair, though, the haptics do feel pretty good. When they use them right, they hit pretty well.
Have they ever felt as good as Astro's?
No, I was just about to say that the raindrops in Astro. Oh.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Well, I think in Spider-Man, when you're a little spider bot and you're climbing through the vents, it feels pretty good there. I like that.
Helldivers is good because it like breaks the controller, and when you play with other people, you hear their controllers rattling over the mic.
That's true Tempest audio right there.
Probably like that. For the battle for them is probably like if you play Astrobot for a long time. I don't know if you notice this. Yeah, your controller's not lasting longer than like 2 hours.
No.
Which is not realistic for Call of Duty or anything.
Yeah,
that you're going to play for a prolonged amount of time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see it. It's a shame we have to wait a bit longer. I do suspect we'll still see it this year. That's what they did with Switch, right? I think I think we will hear about it pretty soon after April when we go into the next fiscal year. probably because they'll have to start drumming up some sort of interest. You saw like off the back of the reporting this weekend, their share price dropped like 8.8%. It bounced back up to like 6, but it like the millions off of their value basically just because of the expectation that they would bring it out this year. So yeah, I'm ready. Talking of like being ready to move to kind of the next generation, going back to our PS5 talk, Switch is honking right now.
Oh, absolutely. It has been for like 2.5 years. We've been like, come on, guys, let's get this off this machine.
I played Princess Peach Showtime recently, which is like I really enjoyed it. Really fun, super charming game. But it looks like a game that's been ported to a last gen machine. You know, like I literally spent a while kind of like squinting at Peach, like she's just all fuzzy. You know, where they've just like lowered a fuzzy resolution. Like,
well, at the very least. At least we ended with the Switch with something to look forward to, so there is some hope. I think we did a good job.
Not this year.
No, but yeah, pardon me, but at least something to hope for, look forward to.
You can look forward to more remasters and ports.
Please be excited.
But like, the other thing I'll say is this, and I've been meaning to say this conversation, but like, I think there's lots of reasons to be, you know, like very tepid about the AAA industry and what have you, right? But if you spend a lot of time in that indie category and that mid tier sort of space, there's just endless creativity. Yeah, awesome. Like just this week, I just did Pacific Drive, which is fan-fucking-tastic. Like it just is. It's a great game. And I never find any shortage of those games. And I think a lot of the discourse that we have around this stuff is very centered on the big players and the platforms and the AAA and all this and that. And yeah, totally. There's lots of reasons to be pessimistic. But I don't know. I'd just say I'm a lot more focused on that smaller stuff these days. And I definitely
that's where the innovation
find endless joy in that, you know?
The innovation has been, that's where the innovation is. That's where the innovation has been for, 10, 15 years now. Large games can't even really afford to innovate on that scale. From their objectives, the amount of people they have to appeal to, they kind of adopt the ideas from those games. I think we're all guilty for, kind of not highlighting what's interesting in that scene enough. But at the same time, it's almost like the general gaming public curate that stuff for us. I mean, hardly anyone was paying attention to Helldivers before it came out, or Power World before that came out. These have blown up off the back of players, and the reception to those games. And, kind of the emergent moments that we're all watching on TikTok.
You're on TikTok, are you, Andy?
I love a bit of TikTok.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
There he goes.
Yeah, that's it. Wow. All right.
That's my doom scroll.
Yeah, I'm into.
Well, with that, I think that's a good place to cut this off because we could talk forever. Andy, thank you for your insight, man. Would love to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
For sure.
Cheers.
All right. Our first sponsor for the week is AG1. They're actually a regular sponsor. They've been with us for a while now. What is this? Six or seven time they've re-upped with frames per second.
Wow.
So first of all, we appreciate that support. Thank you very much. And we like AG1 a lot. We're very glad to have them back because it's a product that we personally use, or at least I do. I know Lucy does. I'm not sure about Jake at this point, but I've been sticking with it ever since they sent me my first little kit a while ago. If you don't know what it is, it's essentially a supplement sort of material that basically aims to give you all of your greens that you need in one day. It's a little powder thing. You drop it in, you stir it around, and off you go. It actually tastes really nice as well. And I've said this in the past where I looked at these green drinks and I'm like, oh, that's probably going to taste terrible. And it tastes 1 billion times worse when you actually put it in your mouth. Not the case with AG1. It actually tastes really nice. I like drinking in the morning. And yeah, it's a really nice thing to do for your body at the start of a day, especially when you are going to spend the rest of that day playing Final Fantasy for 16 hours, not moving, So it is nice to do at least something healthy to kick the day off.
Yeah, that's right, Ralph. It is the official green stuff of Friends Per Second. It does actually, thankfully, taste pretty good. And for someone who is a little inconsistent, I would say, in terms of like eating at times of day and taking my normal vitamins, AG1 really kind of helps round that out. And the supporting good gut health is always good for me because again, like you said, I'm kind of sedentary. Sometimes I don't eat the best. So kind of helping that ecosystem goes a long way. And with this, it's easy. It's a scoop in water. You shake it up, you stir it in the morning, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
It's got little travel packs as well. And
Clutch.
I'm about to do some travel next month, actually. So I can bring those with me and that'll all be covered off. So that's nice. Comes with you can get like a nice little kit as well with a nice fancy little bottle and a little canister thing. And it's nice.
Yeah.
It feels really nice. It's just like a good thing. It sits there in the fridge. You take it out. It's good. So I'm a big fan of it. I really like it a lot. I know, Lucy, you drink it as well.
I do. I also, same vibes where I'm just not good at eating on a regular schedule. I kind of, I just wait for ages until I get really, really hungry and then I go for it. And so starting my day with some AG1, first of all, it's nice to be part of a routine. And also because I wake up, I feel like I hydrate and then I have my AG1 and it feels like I've done something for myself at the beginning of the day. I had some friends around yesterday and they saw the big green kit next to.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
okay.
because I have it out and I was just like, oh, this old thing? Bet you're wondering why my hair's looking so good. My skin and got so much energy. But no, it's great. We've been using it for a long time. And so if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. You can try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin DK plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/friends. That is drinkag1.com/friends. Check it out.
This episode of Friends Per Second is also brought to you by Incogni. Now, I remember you guys got Incogni before I did. And so I'm like a week or two behind you in terms of what this is. And they had to explain it to me, but here's what it is, right? So basically your data is everywhere online because you've had to sign up to some form somewhere so you could buy a new blender on Amazon or whatever. Like just your data is just getting spread around everywhere, right? And you don't even know where it is. And that's what I didn't quite realize until I started using this service, because Incogni is a service that looks at where your data is online and then tries to take it down. There's this automated process that removes your data from these online, databases or whatever else, right? And I had no idea where my data was because Incogni tells you, oh, we found your data here. And I'm like, what the hell is that company? I've never heard of them before, but obviously they had bought my data from somewhere else and then it ends up there, right? So it then begins, once it's found you and whatever else, it starts going through this automated process of taking down your data from all these places. And then it sends you reports for how it's doing. And I think right now my report is up to like at least 50 or 60 places my data has been removed from. And I get like a new report every week telling me on progress. And I don't need to do anything, by the way. I just click a button and then Incogni goes out there and does it. And that's fantastic because the less places that have my data, the better. Like this, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I've been super impressed by it. I don't know what you guys are up to.
Oh, dude, I just hit
number
200. I hit 200 the other day.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I get these like the dashboards. It's always like Zoe from Incogni. And the thing that
Shout out to Zoe. I love getting emails from Zoe.
But the thing that I really appreciate is that like if there is someone that they think might be you, they also ask you to check just in case like your data is slightly wrong, but it is you and you can tell that it's you. And so I've been going in and like checking off this is me from San Francisco, this is me from in London or wherever. And it's finding, it's removed my stuff from over 200 things. And, as people on the internet, as you all are too, it's scary not knowing where your data is going and who has it and what they're doing with it. And so there is no way I would have time to go and do all of this. And so, answering a few questions and getting Incogni to go do it is great. It's
a great service. I had no idea something like this existed. I really like it. And I definitely plan to stick with it in the longer term for sure.
So Incogni is like your secret ally, ensuring your data stays where it belongs, with you. No more shady data trades or surprises. Now, here's a deal for our users. You head to incogni.com, throw in the code friendspersecond, one word, and snag an exclusive 60% off. That's a big deal. So it's time to reclaim your online space with Incogni. That's incogni.com. Use the code friendspersecond. And big thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this podcast. All right, now since that conversation, some stuff has actually been officially announced, confirmed. We got a Nintendo Direct. I think that was one of the more interesting things. You guys have any takeaways from that before we jump into bigger stuff?
I mean, I feel like the takeaway from it is it really feels like Switch it's done. It's like, look, it wasn't a bad Direct, don't get me wrong. It was just there wasn't much there. And you can you get the feeling that that platform, or the developers thinking about that platform, are keeping their powder dry for the Switch 2.
Yeah.
Because why would you launch your game on the Switch if it could run on the Switch 2 and be a launch title for it? You know what I mean? And as Andy was saying, it was meant to be this year. It's probably early next year, but that's neither here nor there. A developer can probably wait 3 months to debut their title. So yeah, it really does feel like there wasn't a lot to show there, and the Switch is wrapping up, which is fine because it's had an incredible run. What a run for a little machine. Highest selling console in Japan of all time, third highest selling console, full stop, worldwide, of all time. And so yeah, it's definitely deserved its retirement period. Now it's doing that thing where it kind of rolls down to like part-time hours, works 2 to 3 days a week. Maybe it goes and sits on some boards or something if it's been really successful in its career, before eventually it just gets put out to start and it's done. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was not much in that showcase.
I like those showcases as kind of a vehicle to get more eyes on games that maybe don't have this much of a spotlight.
Yes.
Things like,
definitely.
I mean, Tales of Kinzera was at Game Awards, but Another Crab's Treasure, for example.
Sure.
Penny's Big Breakaway, which Shadow dropped, I guess, this week because not enough else is coming out this month.
Yeah. Yes.
And so yeah,
that's sort of the person behind Sonic Revival, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that until
I didn't know that.
Edmund told me.
Yeah.
Neither did I.
Oh.
So until Edmund told me, and he's like, that person who led the development of that,
is that Hunter
was
Bridges?
I don't know the name of the person actually, but they're very close to the whole Sonic is cool again thing. So they're definitely. I think there was also, what's that Unicorn Overlord thing?
Yes.
There's like a demo for that
Atlas
now, and
thing?
that carries over. And they say that's like the biggest game they've ever made.
Yeah.
So that looks quite interesting. The ocean one at the very end.
Christian Whitehead. Sorry, that's the name.
Christian Whitehead.
Yeah.
Okay. That ocean one, was it called? I forget the name of it now. Where you're like just a scuba diver hanging out with your scuba diving buddies at the end of the direct. Remember that one?
Oh,
No.
I'm scrolling.
Yeah. Apparently, it's like a re-release of one that was on the Wii U or something. I'd never heard of it before.
No. Endless Ocean Luminous.
Endless Ocean. Yes.
Yeah.
Apparently, and in the chat, like a lot of, or the comment section, a lot of people are really excited. They're like, hey, I never thought I'd see that one again. And I can kind of see how that would be nice. Just rolling around an ocean with some buddies, just exploring and chatting. And you know what I mean? I don't imagine that I would do a lot of it, but a few sessions of that just to check it out and relax and catch up with a friend or whatever you and like hung out with online for a while. That'd be nice.
And in terms of, hey, haven't seen that one or didn't think we would see that one again, for me, it was Epic Mickey. That's something I've never actually, I followed the development of it so closely. It was just like a big game industry thing when it came out, but I never actually really completely played it. So now that they're dropping this kind of like update of it, re-release of it in 2024, I'm probably going to jump in. I'm not like a Mickey, I don't have any like connection to Mickey Mouse. Like if you think, like, who is he? Like what's his deal? Like, what, does he have any lore?
Behind the ears, between the ears, getting into the brain of Mickey Mouse.
This is our chance to interview Warren Spector.
I mean, yeah.
We can get
hell
him.
yeah.
We
A
get him
really
on the
interesting
podcast.
story behind that development. So.
Hugely interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm sure he would love to tell it for the 800th time on our podcast.
Xbox shit.
Yeah.
Dropped too.
Yeah.
It was Pentiment
and Grounded.
And
then a tweet about Sea of Thieves coming to PlayStation afterwards.
Yes, exactly. I was surprised. I would have thought Hi-Fi Rush would go on the Switch.
Oh, it did, didn't it?
But
didn't it?
No, it didn't.
Oh.
It's not. No, it's not. That's the tweet also said that Hi-Fi Rush was coming to PS5.
Oh.
And so it's kind of like, oh, okay, fair enough, I guess. But we saw those little avatars being released. So maybe it's coming later or something. I don't know.
Because Hi-Fi Rush Switch. Googling. Wow, my computer is running slow.
But yeah, I really would have thought we'd see Hi-Fi Rush.
Eurogamer posted report Hi-Fi Rush will launch on Switch 2. Allegedly.
Oh, there we go.
According to Tom Phillips.
That does actually make a lot of sense because I guess Hi-Fi Rush is quite a nice looking game.
Yeah.
Like it really is visually quite up there, even though it's got its cell shading style or whatever. So yeah, maybe it's just a challenge in terms of the hardware. But then again, like if you can get Grounded running on the Switch, you can get quite a bit running on the Switch if you really try. So I'm sure they could have really tried.
I was going to say,
but maybe they're just like,
no,
let's just save it.
It's not the best looking game, but it does run.
I'm happy that more people are going to play that because that was one of my favorite games from last year. It was on my list.
Too. Yeah,
that
awesome
and Pentiment. What's cool is that I've seen on the Pentiment videos that I've made and stuff, seeing an influx of new people watching the videos to check it out now that it's available on more platforms. And I am very happy because that is just such a very cool, unique game. I mean, we've championed that one a lot, but
I was going to say, you can
come
go
back
back
around is great.
You can go back and listen or watch an old episode of Friends Per Second.
A fascinating interview with director Josh Sawyer.
Yes.
It really was. Yeah, it was a great interview.
But along with that, we also just got like an announcement or a reveal of Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erd Tree. Or shadows. How many shadows are under the
tree? Just the one. It's a singular shadow.
Yeah. So we know it's coming this year. We got a release date, everything in June, and it's more Elden Ring.
I'm so excited.
With special ninja kicks that just see that little triple kick in the air. Yeah. God damn, man. I was like, what the fuck? Let's go.
I know I've spoken about this. Like I told you, I've been watching a lot of Elden Ring speed runs. I've been watching a lot of Elden Ring challenge runs recently. And I know there's no other games coming out. So why not just do a new run of Elden Ring? I downloaded it on PC and I don't want to do the same thing I did last time, which is a magic build. I just want to have like a PC character ready to go, maybe sword and board.
Do the Berserk Boy build. Do a guts
I could do my guts build.
You can finally do your guts build. Yep.
But it's like 10 plus new bosses, new swamp. New swamp.
New swamp. One of the bosses is meant to be as difficult as Millennia as well, so that's big.
Oh shit.
They FromSoft say it's the biggest expansion they've ever done. And their DLCs have always been pretty meaty, you know, like they've always delivered.
Is big and
so pretty nuts.
Miyazaki did say, or somebody from Software said that they compared it to like the same or bigger than Limgrave. So like okay,
but more dense.
Cool. A lot of compelling bosses and stuff too.
It's $40.
Yeah, that's
And I'll pay
$40 plus also like a collector's edition for like $500 or whatever.
Oh, that's statue.
Yeah, the statue. Yeah. So I mean, it's very big. It's very ambitious, but I mean, the quality of this title, like you can't. Who's going to sit there and say that Elden Ring doesn't deliver? You know, like we can argue about price and that sort of stuff, absolutely, for sure. But at the end of the day, I strongly suspect that game, that DLC will be one of the best things we play this year. Possibly even the best, depending on how much of like a Souls fan you are. And so, it's nice to know how much work they put into it, how big and ambitious it is. Because that studio's got to be working on Elden Ring 2 right now as well. Because they just secured the rights. Yeah. The last year they secured the trademark to Elden Ring. Bandai, as in FromSoft, now own that. And of course you'd be working on a sequel because why wouldn't
the biggest thing.
It's
23 million they said they've sold?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yep. And they're looking at like transmedia stuff as well. Like they'll probably do like a TV show or some shit. I don't know.
Oh god.
It's big. It's gigantic. And so they're probably working on another Armored Core as well because that did really well for them. And there's every chance that franchise continues to grow. So
not Bloodborne 2 though.
I mean, look, I do not like what Miyazaki said about Bloodborne. In that interview, he's like, we really want the technological leap to mean something if we're going to remake it. And it's like, dude, we are not asking for a remake.
60
we
FPS.
Just want a remaster that gets it up to 60 FPS and, touch up a few things here and there if you need to. But just that's it. That's all we fucking want. But I guess they feel like they couldn't sell that if it's just a 60 FPS remaster because, fair enough if you're not doing any other work to it. And so therefore it becomes not commercially viable. So they're like, the only way we can sell this is to remake it, and therefore it needs a larger technological leap, and we need to go into like PS6 territory or whatever. I'm like, just give us a 60 FPS remaster. Like we'll look, let's pay $10, $15, $20 for it, whatever. I know many people would just happily pay $70 for that, but I'm like, it should ideally be free because I feel like just if you just up and something to 60 FPS, just make it free. Obviously that's not going to happen, so I don't know.
He said also because like they don't own it either. Not going to happen.
It's PlayStation.
Sure. But yeah, it's such a bummer. The one game that everyone really, really, really wants remade or remastered, I should say, is the one that we're just not getting, and it's a disappointment. So yeah.
Well, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Let's move on to our first user question of the day. You can submit questions to contact@friendspersecond.com. Lucy, thank you for putting that in the notes.
I saw you reading it.
Yeah.
I was like, mate.
I had to read it because I always forget. Brain broken. You guys understand. Come on.
I get it. I get it.
We do, 100%.
This is always very difficult because we got a lot of really insightful, thought-provoking questions. So thank you guys. This one we're taking right now is from Chris from El Paso. He says, I was recently thinking about my favorite games of all time. My list might change later, but I was able to narrow it down to the top 3. Tears of the Kingdom, Last of Us, Prey 2017. A question that popped into my mind while thinking about this was, will I ever play these games again? I had such an amazing experience with these games. Everything from the story, the gameplay, my personal life, and surroundings was just right that I do not want to replay them and tarnish the memories I made with these games. So my question to the friends is, do you all replay your all-time favorite games again, or will you?
Well, Ralph, you're not going to replay Outer Wilds, are you?
Well, there's certain categories of games where you can't.
Right.
Very rare that you can find those games where you just can't replay them. And Outer Wilds, unfortunately, falls into that category because it's the very structure of the game does not allow you, or the very conceit of the game does not allow you, because it's entirely about figuring out very core mechanics and then applying that learning. It's not about Metroidvania unlocks or level ups or whatever else. It's like, can you figure out how this thing works? Oh, you now have figured it out. Cool. If you started another playthrough again, you'd immediately be able to just go through that, right? And I am looking forward to the day, though, where I've just forgotten most of that.
Eternal Sunshine.
It's Eternal Sunshine. Like, my memory has just naturally just moved it out, and I do go back in relatively fresh, where I'm sure I'll remember 1 or 2 things, but the majority of it I won't. But I think kind of related to that, like, this sounds super weird, but I kind of look forward to the day when I kind of retire from this business, okay? Because at that point, I will have the time to go back and play old stuff just for fun. You know what I mean? And that is the reality of this job, which is that, like, you always need to be playing the new hotness. You just always do. And it would be nice if I could go back and, like, play, you know, the Mass Effect trilogy, for example. Prime candidate. Would love to play through the Mass Effect trilogy again. Where do I have a spare 90 hours kicking around just to do that for fun? When I do things for fun right now, I try and do non-gaming things so that I enlarge my palette. I try to read some books, and I try to go outside and get some exercise, and obviously time with friends and family, whatever. When I'm playing games right now, I'm playing what's hot. So eventually, though, I will have to retire, right? That's a thing that happens, especially these days on YouTube. Everyone's fucking retiring on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And so when it happens, then I'll be able to be like, you know what? I'm going to go back and play the God of War games again. That'd be really nice. Or Nier Automata again. All those sorts of things. I think that'd be really wonderful. Yeah.
I used to replay games a lot. Like, I've done the Mass Effect trilogy. I definitely have done Mass Effect 2 about 6 times pre-remaster. And then when the remaster came out, or Legendary Edition, I replayed the whole trilogy then. So I've played those 3 games a lot. Like, I played BioShock a couple times. I think it's rare for me to replay. Just, again, like you said, you have to kind of be on the new hotness. If a game is shorter, I've replayed What Remains of Edith Finch a couple times. Just because that is a nice, you know, bite size. Also, Dishonored and Prey, I replay, but I feel like you get a very different experience every time because you can change how you approach those games. So low chaos, high chaos. But there are definitely instances where Kingdom Hearts 2, for example, I always used to say is one of my favorite games of all time. And then when I was
Really? That's a big surprise.
You didn't know that? Oh, yeah, dude.
I don't think you've ever mentioned that before. I didn't know you were one of these Kingdom Hearts people. God damn, would have made fun of you way more.
I've got a picture. I've got a picture of me in these really baggy jeans, short sleeve t-shirt over a long sleeve t-shirt. My hair is in 2 braids, and I'm playing PS2 just sat on the ground. And I remember that day very vividly because I was playing Kingdom Hearts 2, and my stepmom came in and she just went, I need to shut the door. I can't listen. I can't listen to this anymore. And anyway, but then the thing, when I was coming back to playing Kingdom Hearts 3, I dabbled in one of the collections on PlayStation 4. And I was like, ooh, maybe this wasn't very good. And so I think that kind of stopped me from being a Kingdom Hearts person all those years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of with me. I have the time sometimes to jump in and like kind of like dabble in something old that I love here and there. A lot of the games too I like you can blast through like Metal Gear Solid or Freedom Fighters. You can always just fire up Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But then there are other things that just don't fit in a lot of ways, like Elder Scrolls Morrowind, where that was like time, place. Yes. Lonely kid, discovered this weird game completely on my own, didn't know anything about it, went in blind, fell in love with it, got absorbed in it. Now I go back and play it. Different life, less time. I can't touch every inch of that map. I can't fall in love with it like I did. Also, it's like crappy now.
That's right. That's another thing.
Like fun.
Totally.
How we interface with games has changed. Like what was cutting edge back in the day now can be antiquated because things change. And
I am the type to, with certain things, certain games, defend old control schemes and the way things played. But some of them are just too far gone, so to speak, like Morrowind, where it's like there's been too much past it that makes it a lot less accessible.
I went back and just played like a few hours of Morrowind a little while ago just to like remember.
Slash a rat or two, Just
I do feel like the underpinnings of Morrowind have actually like the design underpinnings and goals of Morrowind have actually aged beautifully in terms of
the conversation, questing, navigation stuff. Yeah.
All of that. Yes, exactly. It's just a few steps too rough at this point, right? So if you were able to capture a lot of what you were going for, but give it a more modern finish, like we don't need GPS markers, little dotted lines pointing us to the destination, but we probably need just a little bit more than like a whole bunch of scrawly text in a journal that lists, like you need to turn southwest at some road.
Yeah, when you pass the village,
which fucking road is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like all that sort of shit, it kind of there's a point in the middle where I think it would need to meet, and I think like, and I think something like Wind Waker did a really good job of that, of like breadcrumbing discovery in a way that felt quite modern. But yeah, just to that broader point, like there are some games where you're like, go back and play Soul Reaver. Essentially unplayable at this point. You know what I mean? Like the cutscenes, the story, the voice work, the setting, it's just 10 out of 10. But in terms of actually playing that game now, it straight up sucks. You know what I mean? And they're another thing that stops us from going back and enjoying the games that we loved is that they're not very good by modern standards these days, and our tastes have moved on. What we think is modern and what we think is enjoyable in the present era is very different to what we thought was contemporary back then. So yeah, that's another barrier, I think.
Sometimes I like it though. Like I said, I'm like a weird pervert. Like with the new Tomb Raider 1 to 3 like re-release, seeing the discourse of some people being like, why is the jumping like this? Why is it so precise?
Oh my!
And I'm like, it's cool, man. It's annoying and it's cool.
It's so annoying. I always hated the old Tomb Raider games. I never understood them. I'm like, this control scheme is ass. This game is boring. I never understood. I always bought them and I always tried to play them, and every fucking time I'm like, yep, this one also sucks. I never understood the appeal of Tomb Raider games.
But it's also, do you guys have old consoles hooked up?
No.
Yeah.
No, I have them like away about boxed, but I don't have them hooked up. No.
I have a million games emulated on my Steam Deck that I've
emulation,
never
man, on Steam Deck. Why would we plug in an old console? It's nice. There's this there's this. I'm not sure if it's like TikTok or maybe it's just Twitter. I think it's TikTok. I don't know. But it's just a person who has maintained a really beautiful collection of old games.
Oh, yeah.
You know the one?
And they
have
a
CRTV
and they'll just show the case and put it in and fire it up.
And that's it.
It's
that's
beautiful.
all it is. It's just take it off the shelf, open up the case, take out the disc, put it in, power it on, show the CRT playing the game for a few seconds, done. And that
Gamer
immediately
Lafan is who I follow.
Is that what it is?
Gamer
that what's it called?
Lafan, Lafan.
Right, I don't know the name,
And
to be
they
honest with
do-
you. But yeah, whenever I see it, I'm like, oh, great, one of these. And I just sit there and watch Gran Turismo appear. And I'm like, oh, I remember that. Okay,
Yeah.
next. You know what I mean? But it's
Anyway.
a nice little moment of joy. And I'm really glad that that person has so meticulously maintained their collection, because it's nice to see that sort of stuff. You know, it's a beautiful reminder of that time.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that question, Chris. That was good. That was really fun. Got myself thinking a little bit. Next up, let's jump into what we are playing. Now, it's been a busy week, but I need to hear from Lucy more about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I want to ask you some questions.
Okay, so I'm not finished it yet. I'm 35 hours in.
So you're about a third in. Okay, good.
Well, yeah, depending on how you slice it. I have complicated feelings about it, but I want to give context as to those feelings. I never played the original Final Fantasy VII. I know
interesting.
the broad strokes. The New York, obviously a 30-year-old spoiler, New York Times gave a push notification for it this week. You see that?
I saw that.
And so,
I was like, that's very odd.
I mean, it was a good piece. Like, they had interviews from all over Square and whatever. But anyway, obviously, cultural impact of that game, working in the space. Even though I didn't play the original game, I'm still very aware of how it is revered, how it changed everything, and the broad strokes of the story and the characters. That being said, I do feel like with Rebirth, I'm on a back foot. I was on the Giant Bomb cast, Revengeance. We have like a spin-off podcast of the Bombcast, and I was on today, and I was the only person who hadn't played the original, and so everyone else was talking about these moments, and I was like, yeah, that was a cool moment, I guess, but they were talking about it with such excitement, and I felt like they were getting such great payoff that I was simply not getting. I also think it is messy. I think sometimes if you played Remake, the end of Remake definitely got carried away with itself, because obviously they're implementing changes, and I think Rebirth definitely also struggles with some of that, not just necessarily with the new stuff, but also how they are telling the story, and they suffer from the classic wanting you to do open world and side content, but also, hey, it's end of the world, got to keep pushing you along to follow the main quest stuff. And so I think it doesn't necessarily get the balance right there. There's also so many mini games, and I really enjoy the mini games, but in terms of flow of the game, they're very weird because there are just so many of them, and you can get really carried away with just going off and doing a minigame stuff, and it kind of takes you away from the story a little bit. And then sometimes the story, you get to the gold saucer and they're like, you have to do this minigame, this minigame, sends you to do all that stuff. And so pacing, it's not as tight. And I think Remake was a really tight, very focused game. And I think this one, it's obviously bigger, there is more in there. It suffers from that little bit. However, characterization, fantastic. It's actually making me care so much more about these characters. Like I said, don't know how it plays out in the original game, but there are side quests, and when you do them, like, you kind of get paired off with a particular member of your team, and then your little relationship goes up, and you can see the visual representation of it. There are some really funny ones. If you find a board that tells you to go find some chickens, do that mission, because the ending is so funny. And it is a very funny game. It's very earnest. It's very hopeful, I guess. I mean, amidst all the doom and gloom. And I think that's what's really pulling me through that, and the combat, which they've made some tweaks to it. So it is still the ATB gauges, still micromanaging your party. But this time you can set up 3 different party makeups, and you can quickly swap between them when you're not in combat. So I was doing a thing where it's like, I was up against this boss battle, and I was really not working with my regular party. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to switch it to Cloud, Baron, Tifa. And it was like a completely different fight. And it was really exciting. And they've put on in these new synergy skills that is like,
they're cool.
They're really cool, and they are so over the top. I'm all sort of and like limit, and that's what I love about Final Fantasy, right? These moments where it just is like, forget about, you know, thinking, oh, this has to be not realistic, but you know, there's just some moments that are just so out of left field and so wacky and so grand, that I think is great. And I think Rebirth definitely has a lot of those. It's very beautiful. Its music is incredible. Queen's Blood.
How open worldy is it?
So the one thing I'll actually say, it's not true open world. It's like regions. They're pretty big. And it is quite funny because you don't really have to engage with that stuff if you don't want to. The first one that I got to, I think the best comparison I can make is like getting to the hinterlands in Dragon Age Inquisition, where you get there and you're like, this is a huge area, there is so much to do. Whereas in Dragon Age, it was kind of a chore, but it feels very similar in terms of like, oh, I'm out there and here's this area and I feel like I have to do every single thing in this area. You really don't in Rebirth. There are things that you should do. So, you know, Chadley, that little weirdo with the socks and the suspenders from Remake, he's back, baby.
Yeah, I met him.
And he is basically trying to find out, gather more information about the planet, about things like summons, and he will set up little combat scenarios for you, and he also will develop new materia with you. So it's very worth. So when you're in the open world, you uncover things. So you follow like live streams, or you get like you find summon areas, and they have like little mini games, little activities to do. That all feeds into Chadley, and then it's like a completion rate of how much you've done in the area. You don't have to unlock the towers, but if you do, it'll tell you if there's something around. So it's not just like you get on the map and everything's there for you. The towers will be there, and it's up to you if you want to go unlock it and stuff. So the side stuff, in terms of open world, that's the trap. Because it is, yes, it's repetitive. Yes, you're doing the same thing over and over again, but it's satisfying, and it feeds into, and also if you do the live stream stuff, it gives you lore about that part of the world. And so you're like, I do want to know more about like Junon or Nibelheim or wherever. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to find out more. And as someone who hasn't played the original game, I'm like, yeah, I do want to learn more. And I think this is a fun way to incentivize me to do it. I will say the best bit of side content is fucking Queen's Blood. They
Queen's
put
Blood
a
rules.
card game in that game, and it's so sick.
Now this is a new thing I recall. I don't remember.
Yes,
there was something else in the old
entirely
game.
new.
Yeah,
it's got a lot of that triple triad energy, which is like it's good enough that you want to keep playing it, and you want to find everybody else who plays it and beat them so you can get their cards and build like the perfect deck. I'm only a little bit in, but already I'm like, this is everything. I'm just gonna max this out. This is my plan now. This is my playthrough.
Yeah.
That's very good.
So overall, I'm really enjoying it. There are some definite like issues, like the audio mixing, Ralph. I don't know if you've had this. The audio mixing is bad.
As in, like hearing some dialogue sometimes.
Yeah, but it's throughout the whole game. It's like
it's like a Nolan film. You're like,
yes.
What?
Oh my god, yeah. I feel really bad. John Luke on our team, they had to capture the video footage for the review, and they had to do it without subtitles. And they were like, sometimes I just couldn't hear what they were saying.
Sure.
And yeah, I think sometimes storytelling does get a little bit messy. Pacing wise, is not very tight. I am not at the ending yet. A lot of mixed opinions about the ending. A lot of people really did not like it. So I'm very intrigued.
Tam gave this one an 8.
He did.
Rip to his mentions.
God forbid he has an opinion on a video game. But yeah, I know he did not particularly enjoy the ending either.
Sure.
But I think it is going to be interesting as a discussion point. I'm excited to get there, and I wonder if my opinion on it, because I'm not so tied to the original, will be different to those who are in love with the original and who grew up with it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because I feel like that I haven't really seen too many opinions or insight from people yet who don't have ties to the original. It's like everybody who jumped in as a reviewer is someone who has been with it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very much in the minority there. And, you know, that's a good thing and a bad thing. I feel like I'm not getting You know, I'm not getting the nice little tingly moments of recognition, or, you know, there's definitely some bits from Remake or like musical notes that are giving me like a great bit of payoff. But I think it's a really good game. I'm really liking it. I also like tried to get through it to see if I could finish it in time for this, and then I was like, you know what, it's not worth.
No.
Like, and also because you guys wouldn't have been at the same point either, so I would rather we had the bigger discussion when you finished it in a couple of weeks.
Yep. Who should we get for that one? Let's get someone in. Let's try and rope in Gene. He's a big Final Fantasy.
Yeah. Gene had finished it in 40, or Tam, because Tam did the review.
Tam as well, yeah.
I know Chaim gave it a 9 for
IGN.
Yeah. Lots of Final Fantasy nerds out there.
Yeah,
I'm look,
first impressions, right?
First impressions, very first impressions. And I'm really early. Like, I've literally just finished chapter 1, and I'm like, I've just hit the first open world, and I'm doing the exploration stuff. I just met Old Mate with the towers. I've just got my first chocobo kind of thing. But like, and I'm probably going to get myself in a huge amount of trouble for saying this, because I don't really want to revisit Final Fantasy 16 discourse, but we're going there. I feel like this game has more personality in its fucking opening chapter than Final Fantasy 16 had the whole way through. Like, I really feel that. Like, it's so much, the characters pop off so much stronger. The music is so much more present, and it just, the way it's so loud. Like, the music is so loud over when you're just exploring and when you're doing anything, because the game wants you to hear what's going on with this music and pay attention to it, and it wants to pull at those strings. Like the mini game stuff, the zany side characters that you meet, the interactions between party members, whatever else. It's just there's so much to it. And yeah, of course, obviously Final Fantasy 16 is going for a totally different tone. Absolutely. It's more serious. It's more Game of Thrones, whatever else. For sure. Absolutely. But I feel like you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I feel like 16 did a lot of that. Like, it could have had that really serious tone, but still had some of that levity that I think makes Final Fantasy feel like Final Fantasy game. You know what I mean? And right now, 16 is just doing that so well, and like, I'm laughing and cheering as I'm playing through little moments, and meeting new characters is so fun, and it just feels so good, man. I really am loving it. I just there's like, I'm really enjoying it a lot, you know. And obviously I can't judge how it goes because I'm only like a couple of hours in for like a 60 or 70 hour thing, but so far it just feels really wonderful, and it's just like constant smiles from ear to ear as I'm finding new parts of it. So
you love to see it. A happy Ralph. Isn't that nice?
Very happy Ralph. Very, very happy so far, for sure.
Now, in terms of you being happy, you played Skull and Bones.
No, don't talk about Skull and Bones. No, we were doing so well.
Yeah, I didn't watch your whole video, but I got the gist that like you appreciated some aspects of it.
Yes. Yeah, so Skull and Bones, because obviously you played it as well, Jake.
Yeah.
And Lucy, you haven't played it yet.
No.
No, that laugh was so good. It was almost like, this like, don't be ridiculous. I'm not going to play Skull and Bones.
I feel bad. So many people worked so long and so many years on that game.
So many people worked on it. Like,
but I'm just, you know what?
Yes.
I don't have it in me, guys.
But okay, here's the thing, and I was very clear about this in my review, and I think a lot of reviews have echoed this as well. I sense you were in a similar place, Jake, right? I've definitely seen a narrative out there trying to suggest that this game sucks. It's like a shit game, and it's like a catastrophe, and it's just, and I'm like, that's not true. Like, it's not that bad as a video game. It's not, because I think you play some stuff and you're like, this is offensively bad. It is broken. Half of this shit doesn't work. Half of it is so badly designed. It's like, what were you thinking when you made this? It's annoying and frustrating, and you just don't want to pick it up, right? This is not that. It's really not. This is just really average. It's just a very average video game. It's kind of boring, and yeah, it's repetitive, but it's like, it's arcadey and it's simple and it's effortless to play. You know what I mean? And everything that it wants to do works. You know, like you can go around and be a pirate and you can collect resources off your pirate ship by chopping down trees. It's stupid, but it works. And if you just want to log on and have a bit of relaxed fun, like it's like one of those dad games we spoke about. Like, you know, it's a different type of dad game. But like there's your type of gamer who only has a couple of hours a week to play and they want to log on and they just want to fuck around and do something low stakes.
Blast
and
some pirate
silly.
ships.
Yeah.
Blast some pirate ships and, you know, upgrade your pirate ship and do that. And this game lets you do it. It really does. And had this game come out at $30, had it not been stuffed full of microtransactions, had it not been labeled quadruple A by Yves Gilmore, the reception to this, I think, would have been quite different. It's clearly not a good game, but it's also not the catastrophe that I think a lot of people are trying to paint it as I've seen in some of the coverage, you know?
Is it bad that like I can acknowledge that like, yeah, technically it's fine. And like I've been on the subreddit and see that it has an audience and I'm like, I agree,
Definitely.
like there can be an audience because some of it is good enough, but I personally actively, strongly disliked it. Like just deeply unhappy playing it.
Why though? Why did you strongly dislike it?
So for me, the biggest thing is the instant turnoff of being like, hey, all right, come here. Hey, click on that. All right, that's how you craft something. Okay, come over here. Click on that. That's how you craft that to get that. With no real sense of anything, any doing, any any value to any of it, and then like couple that with like no world building, caring about anything, which is fine. Not every game needs that, but like the game will give you characters talking for a while about what the fuck ever, and like I don't care.
So annoying.
And I'm like, just give me a big gun on my ship because that's what this is all leading to anyway. So that stuff just really, it was like an instant like I'm like, it's this. It just feels so cynical in a lot of ways, and it's a shame because I think all that stuff gets in the way of the highlight, which you did shed light on, the arcadey, I guess is the word, of the pirate ship combat. I think like the effects of the weapons and like all the different types of weapons are very cool and very satisfying, and it's all super fast. I know a lot of people are comparing it to like AC4 Black Flag, but AC Black Flag is like kind of slow compared to this. I still prefer that better, but I don't think this is like an incorrect way to do some sort of ship combat. I just wish there was more. Like it's hard not to compare it to other pirate games, but there's no level of swashbuckling. And swashbuckling doesn't necessarily mean I have to jump on other ships or free roam with a gun and a sword, but it has to have something else other than a ship and then clicking on men, you know? Like I'm walking around, I'm on foot, but it's that part felt meaningless or like kind of like a little more afterthought to me.
I definitely agree. I mean, the amount of stuff that would have been left on the cutting room floor for this one, it would be staggering to see it all. Like, because this has been in development for 11 years. It was a spin-off. It was always intended to be naval combat focused because, you know, this studio worked on the naval combat for Assassin's Creed Black Flag and whatever, and kind of, you know, it gets combined and plugged into the the Assassin's Creed game. And so that was the focus of it. But surely at some point they would have had a more interesting and ambitious campaign than this. Surely they would have had some characterization in NPCs, storyline, something that makes it pop off more than this. It's been stripped back to its most essential elements. Like what actually works here? Well, the ship combat works and the sailing around works and the, you know, being able to upgrade something works. Okay, just ship that. Just put that out and hopefully we recoup our money, you know? So I hear you. I hear you in the sense that with that, in the absence of that world building, it can definitely feel, it just feels so dry. It's so lacking in personality and charm.
What do you think about its lifespan though? Because the one thing I do feel in the back of my head, I remember being excited for Sea of Thieves, jumping into Sea of Thieves and finding it a little light, a little lacking. I wonder if Skull and Bones can get really fleshed out.
Yeah, here's my I haven't said this, but here's my very You never know, by the way. We don't know with these games, right? We were just making our own guesses, okay? I was very sure that Anthem was going nowhere. And I'm like, nah, this is not going to work. This is not going to happen, right? I'm pretty sure the Suicide Squad's going nowhere either. Like, I can't see how that game survives. And right now, even, for example, it's at less than like 1,000 current players on Steam. Like, it's tanking super hard. But with this, though, I actually think this has a future, you know, for two reasons. Number one, I think it just hits this niche that's smart, that no one else is quite hitting, because it's not World of Warships and it's not Sea of Thieves. It's arcadey pirate thing where there's going to be some people who just want relaxed piratey fun with some friends or on their own, and it's very pick up and play and relaxing and chilled. And there's enough within its core offering that I can see it existing as they build it out more and more with more things to do. Okay. Mm-hmm. Number two, Ubisoft are secretly very good at sustaining their games for the long term. Not all of them, mind you, but secretly they are. And if we forget about For Honor
lasted for so many years, people didn't even.
It's still going.
Yeah,
it's still going. Right, it's still going.
Like Hyperscape was the one that.
Hyperscape was the one that just dropped off for sure.
But yeah, no, For Honor, The Crew.
The Crew is another one, and that just had really good sales for number two. They're very sort of buoyed by those sales. Obviously, Rainbow Six Siege for sure, but even their sports category, when we talk about like, you know, it was Steep. It was the first one, and then was it Steep? It was Steep. Steep, yes. And then Riders Republic more recently, and that is still going as well, right? So and I'm sure there's probably some other live service stuff that I've forgotten about. Like, I don't know, is Just Dance a live service? I'm pretty sure they would probably drop new tracks in that throughout the year.
Is there no yearly installments?
There are yearly installments, but I'm not sure if they also do. They probably also do track packs and whatever. Yeah. My point is, Ubisoft actually do keep their live service games going. And I'm not saying that they're really massively successful, but I think that they managed to find audiences, service those audiences really, you know, in the way they want to be serviced. And they just keep ticking along, you know? And I really think Skull and Bones has the chance to do that. I don't anticipate it's going to be big. I don't anticipate it's ever going to like become the game that people play, but I think it's going to find its little niche and keep going because enough of it works. And Ubisoft, I think, are very incentivized to keep it going, you know?
It would be really cool if it had been used. I mean, the thing, I haven't been following it too closely because I was just like, it's not really my thing.
Sure.
From what you're saying about the fact that there's no characterization, like there's no famous characters from Black Flag or anything in there. It would have been really cool.
Famous characters from anywhere.
It would have been really cool. And like, you know, Sea of Thieves started with its own original cast and then they had things like the Pirates of the Caribbean tying. It would be really cool if Skull and Bones had been this vehicle to tie in other things from the Ubisoft catalog.
I think there's something there. I think they could almost like tap into like real pirate history and pirate stories and like make that a cool thing because it almost feels like it's built for a lot of it. The first pirate town you start out in, as much as there's no like compelling characters in it, it just is riddled with shit. Like just pirate guys drinking, everything is trash, everything is a mess. And it just feels like a real good, like, you know, scoundrelly pirate island. Even when you find random outposts, you park your boat at places you can walk around. They feel like empty vessels for NPCs and you know, vendors and stuff. But if you just look around, there is a lot of like cool beauty and detail. So it's like it needs to be populated. Do the Assassin's Creed thing and have like, hello, I'm Benjamin Franklin, and like have him not Benjamin Franklin, but like the pirate equivalent of that, like Black
Leonardo da Vinci, the pirate.
That's the thing. You could do. I mean, like it's not real life. Why not have Captain Sam Fisher? Like that's a whole season.
Oh,
right?
Kill me now.
Oh my God, Lucy! No.
Like Captain Sam Fisher, or like
they would do that.
Michael Ironside with a pirate accent.
No, but it's like if Ubisoft has so many. If you want eyes on a new franchise like this or a new game like this, why not use your catalog? Because otherwise you've got this game that's devoid of life and you haven't bothered to put a story in. Just borrow the other characters you've got.
Do a crossover with Avatar and then one with Star Wars.
Oh, no. Oh, yes.
Harrison Ford comes and does Captain Han Solo.
Have you heard about
he is a captain.
The tale of the ghost ship, the Division 2?
That's right. I mean, oh, man.
It is technically a quadruple A game.
Yeah, that's right.
What does that mean?
Can I I mean, can I just say though, like, I think I probably made a big deal of it about it already, but that makes me so fucking mad. Like, I'm so mad that dude stood up and said that. Like, what fucking bullshit.
So for
to
context,
label this.
Just for context, the head of Ubisoft, Yves Guillemot, in an interview described Skull and Bones as not a AAA game, but a quadruple A game.
Was it on the interview? Or was it their
it was earnings call?
Earnings call. Thank you.
It was to his shareholders. And by the way, you can't straight up lie to shareholders. You can lie to us and whatever, but if you lie to your shareholders, they can sue you. Like, that's how that works, you know? So it was just infuriating to hear him say that. It was so brazen. Like, sure, pump up your title. Say it's cool. Say it's a very complete game as a selling point. Whatever, okay? Whatever. But don't say that. It's so obviously a lie. It's so... I don't know. So I just got really caught up on that. And I think as well everyone did. That really painted a target on this game's back. And I think one of the reasons why people were so... And I'm not saying the game is good. I've said multiple times. I think it's like mid at best. But I think people really had it out for this game and really wanted to put it in its place, so to speak, because of what Gilmore said about it. It's like, you think this is quadruple A? Allow me to show you in detail why it is not to my massive audience of, you know, all these streamers who have all these followers and all this sort of shit. You know what I mean? Such a stupid thing to say about a title that was clearly not quadruple A and was clearly up against it in terms of like reception and hostility.
Yeah, it was a bad quote. I kind of interpreted it as, I was like, I think I know what he means by saying quadruple A. He means that because of how much money they spent on it. 10 years worth of just dumping cost. That I was like, yeah, okay, quadruple A in terms of price tag.
What a failure of Ubisoft's project management and portfolio. Like, just for it to have got to that point and for them to have done this thing, and just what a deal, right?
Because it was a Singapore.
Everyone says this, but I've never once seen the article that definitively proves that Ubisoft had to release this game because of the Singaporean government deal.
Yeah, I don't think deals lock in that hard. Like
that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense to me that a government would say, "Oh, we will give you this money to hire our people." But whatever else, but you must release the game. Like, why would the government deal stipulate that?
I don't know. I'm not a business guy.
I've never believed that, but maybe it's true. I just haven't seen the proof.
Because I just can't think of why you would keep something in development for 10 plus years. Like,
yeah, I just think project mismanagement. That's Ubisoft's whole MO for the last little while. They've just mismanaged so many projects, and so many of them have fallen flat. And you know, and I don't know, like, they really have to get this shit together because they're not going to survive much longer if they keep like fucking things up like this. You know what I mean? They obviously lost an absolute packet on this game. There's no question about that. I don't know how Avatar has done. Who knows? I mean, I don't imagine Avatar sold a boatload. I know Prince of Persia hasn't sold, or the rumor is Prince of Persia's not sold a lot, which is a shame.
They said they announced it. Well, no. It was in a report. I think it was 300,000.
Sure, which like is not a lot.
Not a lot, but that was a couple months ago. A month ago.
Yeah, and look,
what year
that is not a game that's meant to sell 6 million units, right? But look, and I think as well they also had, and I think we were talking about with Annie and, you know, Rabbids, for example, not doing particularly well. That one they announced officially, that was disappointing for them. So yeah, Ubisoft, which, you know, hopefully goes well. And also, they're working on the Division 3, which is going to be multiple years out from now, but that'll almost certainly sell well because the Division still has a lot of pull. It really does.
Oh, I mean, Assassin's Creed. You got what? Like
Assassin's Creed, massive.
Red, Jade.
Yep, all of them. Assassin's Creed, all the colors.
Dude, Hex is the one I'm looking forward to.
Hell yeah.
Sure.
Give me that witch hunt.
Totally. And like a Far Cry, I mean, you've got to reboot Far Cry at this point. You can't put out Far Cry 7 and make it the same as the others. You've got to reboot it, right?
There's rumors of 2 Far Cry. There's like one multiplayer game, and then there's one that's 7.
Right. Okay.
So. Got to go back to basics. Just be a Hawaiian shirt guy with a gun on an island, tropical island.
Yeah.
Dennis
Just make them smaller.
You're describing Dennis Nedry right
there. Make them smaller.
Smaller than Dennis Nedry?
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, Far Cry.
Hey, I will have no Wayne Knight's slander. No, do not weight shame Wayne Knight.
I would never.
I want to get him on the pod. Anyway,
absolutely.
The other thing from this week that we've been playing is Pacific Drive. This is that sci-fi first-person car game. It's finally out. It's on PC and PS5, and I absolutely enjoyed it. I think you have to be a specific type of gamer for it because it demands a lot of you. But I think it is just a really creative and different thing. And I'm going to always like kind of like go to bat for that. I'm like, this game takes a minute to describe what it actually is. It's unlike anything else on the market. And I will always present that to people who are like, I'm bored of games. Why are all games the same? Why are all games remakes? They're not. Here's a good one.
They're not, man.
You drive a fucked up car through a post-apocalyptic, like a Chernobyl-esque like anomaly zone, and like car PG is what a lot of people are calling it. I think it's a lot more of like car rogue, like stalker.
Car survival. I think survival is actually its defining aspect over.
Yeah, you are doing a lot of survival.
Did you see someone? It was a Steam review, and they just spelled Stalker like they did it as they write the name of the game, Stalker, but it was STACAR, which was very good.
Oh right,
like they stylized it. I like that a lot.
It's clever. Yeah, it's good, and that's spot on actually as a description, because obviously it draws a lot of inspiration from Roadside Picnic, which obviously Stalker was based on that and whatever else. But yeah, I mean, how did you go with the difficulty side of it, Jake? Like, did you find it dialed in? Because it's a pretty unforgiving game, and just for context for anyone who hasn't played it, it is a car game where you go out on missions and you need to collect supplies to keep your car running, because your car just gets really fucked up all the time. You have to repair it all the time, but also you collect those things to upgrade materials, right? To upgrade your car, new components, whatever else. But yeah, sometimes the zone is very hostile and you will just die. And then when you do that, you pretty much lose everything that's on your car. Like, you just have to get it all over again. And it's, the later parts of the game as well, very unforgiving in terms of how hostile the zone is and how many things can wreck your day. How did you go with that side of it, Jake?
You look grumpy.
I think that the beginning of the game kind of set me up for it, so that by the time it got even harder than it already initially was, I had been kind of trained in the game's bullshit and the tricks it can pull. But also I had worked hard enough to get a bunch of cool equipment and how to deal with every task that made me pretty satisfied. It is definitely a game that is like designed to, so it's like hard, difficult. It's hard to describe because it's almost more just like constant annoyance and frustration more than just raw challenge. And I think the game tries to push your buttons intentionally, because you could be driving down a road and then it's like, radiation cloud, your car doors are rotting off. And you go, okay, that's fine. I have this tool that's going to help me out with that. But then it's going to be like, also your tire blew out. And then you're like, okay, no problem.
While you're in the middle of the gas cloud, by the way.
While you're in the middle of gas cloud, and you're like, okay, cool, whatever. And then it's like, here comes an alien spaceship thing to like knock your car off the road. You're like, great. And then there's more surprises and weird things throughout the game. But like, part of the fun with all that, like the game just like trying to ruin your life constantly, is the discovery and kind of figuring out all these weird anomalies and how you kind of have to get effed by them to understand what they are, because a lot of these things are so vague. It's like, it's a floating rock or a weird little wisp of wind. And you're like, what is that? I'm not going near that. But you kind of have to go up and look at it to figure out what it is and how to prepare to deal with it. And some things, there's not really a good solution other than just, grit your teeth and drive through it. But
you also need to drive your car into them as well, because if you just walk into like the left, right, for example, it doesn't do anything. No. So you're like, all right, well, that didn't do anything. I guess I'll drive my car into this and figure out that, this just messes with all my directions and I keep going left and right and my blinkers, my, windscreen wipers get turned on, my horn starts beeping, whatever. So you do need to experience this stuff. I like, when I wrote it up in my review, I'm like, you kind of need to touch the fire to see how it burns. And that is like, it allows you to, and that is an experience that some games ask you to do, because we already know, like in a platformer, if we're jumping over a pit and we see fire beneath us, we're like, well, we know that's fire and I'm not meant to jump in that, whatever. Most things in video games present as very obvious hazards that we should avoid. But with this one, they're not obvious. And in fact, when you get used to them, when you discover them, they actually can bring you some benefit as well. So, for example, there's like electrical clouds, which you want to avoid, generally speaking, but they can also charge your battery.
Yeah.
Oh.
And if you need battery power, you will start driving into those things on purpose to recharge your battery, and you'll like lose some car health, but that's that. So there's other things like that function that way that are really helpful in some ways and hurtful in others.
It's like scientific achievements. Like you feel like you're figuring things out, and like you're like, it's like you're a DeLorean, like time machine, like you're slapping all these weird scientific parts on it as you're figuring it out. And it's really satisfying.
It is. And it's also really nicely written. That's the other thing I would say. You get, I mean, most of these games that are survival games, this is also has like roguelike elements, roguelite, I should say. These games don't usually have much room left for story because a lot of work goes into the game design. A lot of work goes into making a functional game. And also structurally, those sorts of games don't lend themselves to like more linear narratives because you need to make lots of room for the player to do different things at different times. And it's just hard to nail a story in a survival game. But this nails a story in a survival game because it's mission based. And so they can kind of dole it out at their leisure. And when they do it, it's fantastically written with a lot of soul. And the voice acting is top tier. Really love the voice acting. It always just felt like such a great payoff to go through that stuff. So I was really pushed forward by the desire to like figure out what's going on in this world and figuring out what's going on with these characters that are kind of leading me through it.
What also
it's
helped
a really
for me,
great game.
Yeah, it is. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. I was just, that's all.
The one thing I didn't touch on in the before you buy video, I'm working on like another video because I want to dive into this stuff, is the tone, atmosphere, visual design. It's got elements of like an abstract kind of Half-Life feel. A lot of it reminds me of Inside. Then there's also the car itself, and there's something to it, like how you get used to it and it's its own thing, but also aesthetically, atmospherically rather, I should say. It's the game I've found that most accurately captures being in a car in the rain. We've experienced like story games with like you're in cars and you're in the rain, but there's something about the sound design, the darkness, the visual, the sound of the wipers, that they just so accurately capture what it's like to be sitting in a car at night in the rain, that really is a really good juxtaposition with like how the game is just trying to like, again, ruin your life. But then it's got so many moments of like, you want to stop and pull over and hear what these characters are saying. You want to just look at the rain droplets hit the windshield. Like it does a lot for me, man.
Yeah. I mean, just coming back to my earlier exclamation, it's a really, really great game. And coming back to the conversation we were having with Andy, and and I said it then, but I'll say it again briefly here. It was like, there's just so many good games that we don't focus enough time and attention on because I think we're so fixated on that AAA space. But Pacific Drive is one that really just helped me remember that, and it just came together so well, and it's so memorable. And I don't know, I definitely will be thinking about this one in the years to come. Like I really will. I know I'll have other reviews where I refer back to this one, and it's so well put together. It's so smart,
surprisingly deep.
It's surprisingly deep and affecting. And it's like $25, man. It's like $25, and it's like 20 to 25 hours. There's no microtransactions in it. It's just a straight up, honest to goodness video game. And I love this stuff. It really is great. And so I was very pleased to put that review out because there's nothing this is the thing, right? Here's the truth. You put out a review for Skull and Bones that's negative, and you're like, oh, I know that's going to get lots of views. Off it goes, right? And you put out a review for Suicide Squad, and you're like, Suicide Squad sucks. And you're like, well, I know that's going to get a lot of views too. But like, you really, really, really fucking hope that like your Pacific Drive video gets a lot of views because that's the one that's like, I'm going to show you something that you didn't know about, and you're going to hopefully take a chance on this and find something that's the best part of like this gig. You know what I mean? And so I really do recommend it strongly to people. And I think if you take a chance on it, you're really going to have time with it. I think.
I agree. Well said.
So yeah.
That
I
specific
played
drive.
the demo. I played the demo back at PAX, and I played it for a couple hours at home. And then I've just been caught up in Final Fantasy. But I've got it queued. I've got that and Balatro, which is that one that everyone is talking about. Everyone's loving it. So I will play those in time for next episode.
Yes.
Next up, another user question. This one comes from Jacob Silvis, who says, my question is, if you could choose to make the restaurant of your dreams based on a video game, what game would you choose for the theme? I think something horror themed would be interesting, like Resident Evil, but also something Nintendo-ish would be fun. Thank you so much if this question gets picked. Okay, I don't need to read that part.
I'm going to read that part because I think it's really cute. Okay. He says, I always tell my wife, I wish I could be friends with Jake IRL.
Oh, that's very kind. Sweet. I'm not good at reading like compliments. I think it's weird. Thank you, Jacob. Also, you have a nice name.
That's adorable.
I can start with this question. Video game themed restaurant. Jacob suggested something Nintendo-ish would be fun. I had Bowser's Big Bad Meatball in Super Nintendo World, and it made me feel like a piece of shit. It was not good. It was not a good meatball. It was not spicy. It was not a challenge. So I award that 0 points. That's all I have.
I had the tomato soup in Toad's head as the bowl, and I got to take the bowl home from Nintendo Land.
It's like the monkey brains.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah,
they see you sell the bowl. Yeah. No, that is a pretty cool themed restaurant, though.
That was really cool. They had the panels with little videos, and
they did.
I really enjoyed that.
And there's like a little like a Bowser attack because it's in like Toad Kingdom, and then there's like a Bowser attack where the lights go down and the walls like project images of Bowser attacking and doing all, and the Toads are like, no.
Except my image on Slack is the one Toad that just goes, ugh. Just doesn't care.
We're also
like,
fixated on that one.
Yeah.
I think for a video game themed restaurant, I really am really into Palico stuff from Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
If I could somehow go to a restaurant where these cool, savvy, sharp cats whip up a meal and throw it down at my feet, and it looks like it's like rendered in like 4K, because the food always looks so good in those games. That's the type of restaurant for me.
Oh, I've been to a few in like gaming events over the years. They've done various tie-in stuff, and I went to a Yakuza one once where they basically just rented out this really nice Japanese restaurant, and they gave us all a Majima eye patch, and that was it. But that was really fun.
There's a place in Sydney called Fortress, which I think is a global chain. I don't know, but we have something called Fortress Sydney, and it's essentially a giant gaming bar, and it's on multi-stories, and it has like an esports hall, and like it has like a cyberpunk themed bar, right? But it also has a tavern that is essentially like stepping into the Hearthstone tavern, especially like from that commercial. Remember they did that live action Hearthstone commercial back in the day? That for me, I love that place, and that's the kind of video gamey vibes I want. Like I just want a place that would sell mead unironically, that's it. So I actually am quite a fan of Fortress for that reason.
I would love to do. I mean, so Jacob mentioned Resident Evil. I think that would be really fun because there's a bar in the UK called Loading Bar. Very good. And they had have a drink called like the T-virus, and they had little
syringes.
Syringes, and so it would be kind of like one color, and you would inject some booze or whatever that would be bright green, and that's a really fun way of.
I went to a bar in Singapore that was exactly that years ago. Like it was not a video game theme. The whole thing was just like medical themed, and all the waitresses or whatever were dressed as like nurses, and they would serve you shots in little beakers, little whatever you call them, the long
test tubes.
Oh yeah. Have you heard
test
of
tubes? Yes, all that sort of shit.
Well, there's the Heart Attack Grill in Vegas.
Oh yeah,
which is
heard about that
but
place.
messed up.
Yeah.
Sure.
You could also do. Oh, what was I gonna say? Oh, so Japan, obviously they have the Kirby Cafe. I did the Persona Cafe, but they didn't really every member of the Phantom Thieves had their own drink. I had the Haru one; it was like bright pink and whatever. But they didn't do, the Big Bang Burger, which is the whole thing in Persona 5. The challenge that you do, which I think would be really fun. Or like they didn't even do. I don't even think they did curry or coffee, which is the thing that you make at LeBlanc. So.
Good question, though.
That's a really good question.
It's a good question.
I'm
I like
hungry.
it.
I'm also really hungry.
I am quite hungry.
Well, we still got to talk. Let's go over to show and tell so we can eat. This is the section where we all bring different random things to the table to talk about. Lucy, let's start with you.
Hello.
Yeah, Lucy. What do you got for us, Lucy?
So,
Come on.
that's it. Like, games-wise, I know I mentioned it in the chat with Andy, but I was at DICE last week, so I got to hang out with a bunch of industry folks, developers, publishers, fellow folks in the media, go to the awards. Weird vibes, sad vibes. Lovely to see everyone, though, and it was nice just to be around, like, at an event. That was the one thing I did. The other thing I did... So, new season of Love is Blind is back, baby. And I have a group of friends here in the US, and we started to do it during COVID, where every week we would get together and we would watch Love Island over Zoom together. And they were already doing it, and then I got invited, and part of me was like, are they just doing it because they need a British translator? But no, they're like my best friends. And so we started doing it with Love is Blind. Seasons of Love is Blind, not great. They call it an experiment.
This is the wall, right? Where the person talks to the other person. They don't see them.
Get engaged to someone without ever seeing their face.
Yeah, it's hot.
And this season has been... a friend of mine came over on Sunday and we were like, oh, we'll watch a couple episodes. We ended up watching all 6 and they left at 1 a.m. And then last night I had friends round to watch the other episodes, and it's just kind of... It is just good trash TV. I mean, trash TV...
Give us an example of why it's good, though. Like, what? Are we just talking about, like...
Okay, so one of the main dramas right now is there is this poor girl who said to the guy, who do you ever get told I look like a celebrity? And then she immediately was like, I've been told I look like Megan Fox.
Does she look like Megan Fox? Question mark?
She then tries to walk it back because she's like, I have dark hair and light eyes. She's an attractive girl, don't get me wrong. But when you say you look like Megan Fox, you put a very specific expectation in the mind of someone. And unfortunately, the guy clearly gets so caught up on that. He is also dating in the pods this stunning woman who says she has a child, and you can see him. And that's very fair. Like, maybe you don't want to be involved with someone who has a child. And he says, but you can see him be like, oh, Megan Fox versus woman who I don't know anything what she looks like but has a child. So he goes with a girl who said she looked like Megan Fox. Their first meeting is one of the most awkward things I could have ever seen.
Oh, wait, now this actually makes more sense because she says she looks like Megan Fox, but he's never seen her, and he's taken her on a punt.
And he gets engaged to her.
And so he feels like he's been catfished because it's like, you do not look like Megan Fox.
Well, he doesn't. Well, the thing is that he's doing a testimonial just before he goes to get engaged, and he says the thing about Jessica. I mean Chelsea, because the girl's name is Chelsea and the other girl is Jessica.
Oh my God.
And it's just like...
Wait, I'm seeing this picture of this woman now. Does not look like Megan Fox.
An attractive girl, but yeah. And so anyway, it's just like full of moments like that. Like there was a bit in the episode that we watched last night where one guy got hit up outside of the pods by the girl that he rejected, left his new fiancée at home, but shared his location with her and was at a bar chatting to this other girl until 5 a.m. And then the fiancé is going, well, I was asleep. I didn't check your location. And he was like, yeah, I was just at this bar talking to her. And then she was like, well, I did wake up and I did check your location and you weren't even in that part of town. You were in this part of town where that girl lives. And it was like, oh, great drama.
Oh my God.
And it's like, doesn't involve me at all. And I think sometimes when things are really stressful, I need something to I just need brain rot TV.
Yeah, you need that.
And I'm really... the other day I watched Secretary and I watched Ex Machina and I was like, I can't focus on anything. And then I started watching Love is Blind. I was like, brain switch off.
There
Good.
I used to watch Bachelor for that exact reason, but then I got over it.
I've never seen a single episode of The Bachelor, but yeah.
It's exactly what you expected.
Yeah. New season of Love is Blind.
There's no surprises.
Lucy's review, perfect. Ralph, what do you bring this week?
All right, we're gonna change tack here, big time.
Okay,
big time.
Okay.
Did you guys see Sora? The AI video thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that?
Oh boy, how long do you have?
I felt very
so Sora, just in case
weird
anyone
about
doesn't
it.
know, Sora is like an AI video tool that basically lets you create AI videos with a prompt. It's from like the Chat GPT company or whatever. And it's pretty nuts. If you haven't checked it out yet, you should go check it out. It's intimidatingly good, like scarily good. Like, Marques Brownlee did a video on it like straight after it dropped, and it's kind of like, why would you need a drone shot anymore that you've paid like a drone operator to make when you can just plug in drone shots of a cliffside villa into this tool and it will give you a very good looking drone side cliff shot villa. You know what I mean? Like whatever. Pretty scary.
It was scary. It was at DICE and we were all watching it.
It was, right.
So we were watching it together.
That's fascinating. What was that response from like developers and creatives? And
not great.
Sure.
I mean, a lot of people were like, interested to see how far the tech has come. The thing is, and I think, Jake, I think you tweeted about this, where it comes down to media literacy.
Yeah.
And you could present that, the one in particular of the woman walking down the street, like she has like a little bit of sun damage on her skin. She even has like neck folds, like the detail in it. Can't do eyes though, so she's wearing fucking sunglasses, so you can't see her eyes. But it looks, if you didn't know any better, if you weren't really looking, if you just a passing glance, you would think it is real. And if you put that on Facebook, where my parents get most of their information that they take as gospel,
absolutely,
you could do. And the fact that misinformation is spread so easily, it's really scary. And there is no safeguard to prevent someone from saying, you pass it off as real. There's no safeguard. And so it's also broader implications of the rampant use of AI generated stuff, the impact on jobs and livelihoods. It is such a, it's weird to be excited about that technology because it is fundamentally incredibly impressive. And it's like, wow, can't even, 10 years ago, can you imagine showing yourself this? But it's also scary as hell. And maybe it's because Terminator 2 is one of my favorite fucking movies of all time, but I'm just waiting for Skynet.
We're not going to make it, are we?
No, we're not.
Nice, Jake.
Yeah,
nice.
I had a rare like take on a current event, and I tweeted it. Some people actually took this as me being pro AI. I'm not really into it, but kind of what you were saying with like our parents' generation, like. The average person isn't having ethical debates about this. They're just like, oh, cool. You put that on a computer and it just made that? Awesome. Cool. When's that going to be the next Marvel movie? Like, people don't give a shit. And that's upsetting. And I think that's why it's more like, okay, like, what do we do now? Like, we need to figure this out. I think I also just come at it from... I majored in English and I majored in art history and I flip-flop back and forth. So like, I like art. I think art is important. I also think tools are important. Tool sets are important. Game makers, artists of all kinds use all different types of tools. These tools always evolve. But I don't know. It still comes back down to me just like an artist learning how to use a paintbrush and practicing and training, and also just having that creative spark. As someone who doesn't have a creative spark, I respect creativity so much, and I also don't want to just use tools to come up with shit. Like, I know my place almost, I don't know. I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. I have a lot of thoughts.
It's hard to talk about, because I think it's very possible to be very supportive of like creatives and artists and want that scene and want that scene to continue to thrive, because it's always been underfunded and undersupported. And so that's a natural inclination, I think, especially for the likes of us who come into contact with creative people and who are obviously very fearful for their livelihoods and whatever else. So it's a natural inclination to do that. But simultaneously, you look at the flip side of it and you kind of imagine like, well, how much easier does this make a thing that we might want to do? And it's absurd, the amount. Because, for example, like if we wanted to describe, like if we were reviewing a video game like Pacific Drive, for example, and we wanted to describe a scene and let it play out in video form of what it would be like to be like in roadside, because I was doing like a bit of roadside picnic and I had to use stills in that, which, you know, I sourced and I paid for them properly and all that sort of stuff. And that's what appears in my video of like shots giving you an image of what this book of roadside picnic is like. And sure, I could have used the Stalker movie as well, which is an adaptation of that, but I didn't, whatever. My point is that like I could in the future plug that stuff into ChatGPT or whatever, Sora, sorry, and create this very vivid image. It would be kind of shitty. It would have some rough edges, whatever, but it would be this thing that would allow people to see like what roadside picnics was like, because I described it and the AI model spun it up in minutes. And if I was to film that thing on location with a crew and whatever else, that would take like $40,000 or $50,000 at least to do that properly. You know what I mean? And like that sort of stuff, it's kind of like, well, at that point, you're like, well, this is a lot to take in. And it's like, how much does this change workflows? I heard just today, Tyler Perry, the filmmaker, studio producer, whatever else, was planning like an $800 million studio investment, like in his studio, $800 million, has canceled that after seeing Sora and what it's capable of doing, right? And that's like, that's crazy straight off the bat. Like Hollywood Reporter was reporting that. But it's impossible to not realign your thinking about what's possible in this space when you see that technology and what it can do. You know what I mean? And it's like, you can't put the genie back in the bottle either. You know, you can't. And so I am definitely very fearful of what this means for creatives and also there's obviously the propaganda aspect, fake news and all that stuff. And I really firmly believe this stuff needs to be regulated, because you can't just have a tool like this out in the wild without any kind of regulation, because that's super dangerous for a variety of reasons. But then, you know, in terms of its impact on creative outlets and creative people, definitely very worried about what that means for them. But at the same time as well, like the technology is just so crazy. It's like, it's wild. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think we're in for a lot of like disruption in this space for the next few years, you know, and figuring out how to do all this responsibly, you know, to keep creatives employed and engaged and like for there to be a future for that, while also figuring out how to like use these tools to create things that we couldn't create before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I want AI to like fix my roads and shit and like, you know, cure cancer. Come on, man.
It's not. It's going to be used to create Night City.
There's a really...
all the shit aspects of Night City, that is.
There's a really weird... I'm getting served on TikTok where it's like passive income ideas, and it's I make however many thousands of dollars. I make however many thousands of dollars a month because I sell courses. And then you keep watching the video and it's, I go to ChatGPT and I say, hey, plot me a 10-chapter book on how to do whatever it is. And then they just sell that. And I'm just like, okay, this TikTok is a scam because no one is buying that. But like, God.
Yeah, that's terrible. No, but there are actually, in fact, there are ChatGPT written books. And in fact, I believe Amazon has had to impose a limit on the number of books that you're able to upload under your name, because so many people were generating ChatGPT books, like just books in ChatGPT and then selling them. And so I think Amazon now has a limit of like 8 books a month you're allowed to publish. As if any one person could actually write 8 books a month. You know what I mean? It's
Stephen King in the fucking 80s,
yeah, sure. David, is it David Sanderson or whatever?
Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, I just think about it a lot, and I just think about like how tricky it's going to be to navigate this period, and I don't know. It's
from all aspects, creative,
from all aspects,
news, information, the world,
all of it. Yeah, it does feel like a tipping point for technology, and when you sort of see that stuff in action. Anyway, that was a bit different to
it was different.
Love is Blind. I'm sorry for bringing the mood down.
Because Jake's on the run sheet just written, oh boy.
No, mine is silly. Mine is
okay.
So
good. Take us back.
We need a bit of that.
This weekend, I cozied up in a snowstorm with a good book, or really a good compilation of comic books.
I love that.
I read a shit ton of the original The Darkness run.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah,
so
sure.
I had kind of dabbled. I had been aware of The Darkness, but I really loved the game. I fell in love with the game. I was like, this is sick, and this is so much cooler. But just recently, my friend just picked me up like the volume 1 compilation of the Darkness comic from like the mid to late 90s, early 2000s. It's Garth Ennis and Mark Silvestri, and It's so not good.
Oh, no.
I was hooked. I read
Really?
all of it, but the game is still way, way better. The game takes a lot of these ideas and just makes it so much cooler. But the Darkness comic is very of the time.
Right.
The art is actually really good, really cool. But it's also every single character that is a woman is just like, she's super hot. Look how hot she is. And it's like full panel spreads of being like, look how hot she is. And then like every time
Are we
kills
talking about
someone,
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth right here? We're
Wait,
talking
are we
about
back on
Darkness.
Tifa? But then also like it's like every time he murders somebody, it's like, look, he ripped off his head and he said like, fuck you. Like it's very 2000s. But
Sure.
It's got a lot of cool like lore. It's got like a lot of like angels and demons things and factions, and Jackie Estacado and like the mob stuff is very different here from how it is in the game. The presentation of the Darkness and the Darkness's abilities are very different. But ultimately, I think I still like the game more. It doesn't
Because
have
Ennis did
anywhere
the
after-
boys, right? I'm just looking because
Yes.
his name is very familiar.
It never went anywhere after the game, did it? The Darkness. Like, was
Darkness
there anything?
2?
Yeah, they made a second one.
They made a second
did?
one. It was
Okay,
good.
right. I
Yeah, I
didn't
like the
even know
second
that.
one.
But the
Okay.
comic ran for a while, and it technically it was like also another thing. It was a spinoff of Witchblade, another comic that's kind of like, what if the Darkness was a girl? But that was first.
Wait, that's not the one. Oh, no. Hang on. What am I thinking of? The movie with Vin Diesel?
The Last Witch Hunter.
Thank you.
Chronicles
His-
of Riddick.
Yeah, no, I was
Riddick.
like,
Sick.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I read that and I didn't really like it that much, but also it was just like comfort. Like when I start reading comics, I can't stop. So I did buy volume 2 on Amazon, the trade, to get that. And I'll report back with more Darkness stuff. But now it makes me want to replay the game, even though we had a conversation earlier
About
not always being able to replay the games. And I don't know if I'm ever going to replay the Darkness, but it still has one of the best lines ever written in a video game.
which is
There's a side quest where you need to go. I'm going to butcher it, but there's a side quest where you're like in the subway and there's like a guy like busking, like playing a harmonica for tip jars for tips. And like a tough guy, like gang guy has been muscling and he's like, hey, get out of here. You can't play here. So the harmonica guy is like your buddy. He's like, hey, Jackie, how you doing? Yeah, this guy told me I can't hang out here. So you're like, I'll go talk to him. And you go talk to him and there's some dialogue options. And Jackie Estacado threatens the guy. The voice actor is so good. I don't know his name, but Jackie Estacado says to the guy, he's like, get out of here or it's going to be a problem. And the guy's like, yeah, or what? And Jackie says, if you don't get out of here, I'm going to show you a magic trick. You like magic tricks? And the guy's like, huh? And he goes,
don't fumble it, Jake. We're so in now, man. Don't fumble it.
Let me look it up. Hang on, look it up.
Oh no.
He says, you like magic tricks? He says, I'll rip your face off and I'll pull a rabbit out your fucking ass. And the guy goes, oh man, and he gets out of here, and that's like quest fulfilled, and that's it.
Right, nice.
Perfect. I totally butchered it.
No,
I tweeted out the clip of it like years ago. You can find it.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's so good.
please.
Right.
I think that's a good place to end it. A line like that sounds a lot like tie your shoes and go to bed, but I'm not going to say that yet. I'm going to say thank you all for listening and watching, and thank you for liking the video version. And all the nice comments on the YouTube video version is very appreciated, but also the people who review on all the podcast platforms. It's great. We appreciate that. Not just iTunes, but the women and children too. No, but the other like weirder podcast platforms. I do see people review on those as well, and those go a long way too. So thank you if you use Pocket Cast, Podbean, any of those. Thank you.
Stitcher, Spotify.
Yeah, we're here every other week. We got some cool things cooking in the next couple of weeks and months. So keep your eyes peeled. But I'm Jake Baldino. That's Lucy James. That's Ralph, aka Skill Up. See you guys next time. Tie your shoes and go to bed, all right?